Hey everyone, Cobra Venom here, producer and basic manhandler for The Pylon Show. Over the past few years, we've had to adapt to a lot of changes. This show was born from the community. Jeff and Artosis led the charge in creating The Pylon Show from the ground up. As you know, we've suffered a tragic loss. Despite obstacles, Artosis forged on, hoping to continually produce a show that would make Jeff proud and ultimately unify the StarCraft community. Later, we relied on the immortal passion of Rotterdam, our ever-supportive friend, to help us press through. As 2022 begins, we are making some more changes to the Pylon Show's format in a way that will provide consistent weekly entertainment for you, our ever-supportive fans. We know how much this show means to the community, and we have no plans of ever stopping. After much effort, change, and heart, we have realized a new system to continue giving you, the viewer, the beloved content we all cherish so much. Over the past year, I know the show has not had a consistent home base. However, in the future, all live streams will be hosted on the Twitch channel listed below. Instead of a single host, we will now have a rotating roster of our fantastic community members making an appearance. We hope to include friends such as Uppetry Zelda, the StarCraft Observer, Apoptosis, Tasis and Artosis covering more Brood War content, Cats, Rotterdam, Fear Dragon, and more. For all of our regular viewers who watch the VOD on YouTube or listen via podcast, don't worry, nothing will change for you. After reaching out to the community in a recent poll, we cannot thank you enough for the overwhelming amount of critiques, compliments, and feedback that you've given us. Through this forum, we've been able to hone in on a more efficient way to produce our show, and to help us cater it to your suggestions. Thanks to your encouragement, we can now prioritize planned projects such as more 1v1 interviews with the pros themselves, short reviews on recent tournaments with your favorite players, taking a peek behind the scenes into how all of these events take place that a lot of us don't see, providing insight into the culture of how different regions of our scene operate, and even more exciting things to come. This is what we hope to achieve in this upcoming year. We will be the source that provides you the best the community has to offer. Because of all of your support, we promise to curate new goals, merch, and perks for all of us. Truly, we are listening. Thank you. Striving to supply the best community content. The Pylon Show. Don't forget, good luck, have fun.
Today, we retake our homeworld. And with it, our legacy.
Hello and welcome to an episode of The Pylon Show. We're on episode number 150. Really excited to have everybody here. You know, we're halfway to 300. Some of you may know me as Nish, or better known as the StarCraft Observer. You may have seen a couple TikTok videos here and there, but I'm really honored today to be on The Pylon Show with all my heroes here. Thank you, Cobra, for that video. You know, answers all of our questions for what's to come in the year with The Pylon Show. I'm really stoked for it. And today, alongside me, is our favorite 5200 player, Uppetry. How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. My chat likes to refer to me as Hardstuck 4.9K Terran. Yeah, so I've decided to take a quick break from losing on the ladder to help host this Pylon Show.
Mhm.
I'm not sure it was an excellent decision on Cobra's part because I never stopped talking. And so role of host is going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like, how'd you sleep, dude, when you got the call? Like, where were you when you got the call for the Pylon Show?
I mean, Cobra was like, yo, so you want to host the Pylon Show? And I was like, it's just like DM, just casually. I was like, oh my God. All right, sure. Let's do it.
Yeah,
I'm down.
yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, so when he messaged me, I literally just got done editing your episode for my podcast. So I was
Yeah.
celebrating by having a couple of beers, and I was like 3 beers in. So usually what I do is I'll pace around the house, listen to audio levels, and just try to be like really calm and making sure everything's fine. And I get back to my computer, and I get this message from Cobra saying, hey, mind looking at this? I was like, sure. So he sends me this document, and it's the outline for today's show. So I was like, okay, he's probably having me look at this because, he wants to figure out the flow of the show and how he wants things to go. So I'm looking through this thing, and then after, there's like this wall of text, and at the very bottom, how do you feel about these talking points and hosting the
Yeah.
Pylon show with Sal? And I was just like, wait, what?
Uh,
Like literally, I couldn't believe it. It was crazy, man. Like I was just in disbelief. So it feels great being here, man, and being a part of the show. So, yeah, man, let's make it a great one, dude.
Great.
Yeah, and then today we have our wonderful guest, Nathanias Brown Baronero, where we'll be talking about the Microsoft acquisition today. A lot of interesting stuff that's happened. With Microsoft buying Activision Blizz, them coming into acquiring all the IPs that we know and love, and a lot of acquisitions, with ESL and then other stuff with like the New York Times and Sony. So lots to talk about here. But before we get into that, I wanted to thank the patrons out there for supporting the show and making the show happen, especially for number 150 today. So if you want to support the Pylon Show, go visit thepylonshow.com, visit the Patreon, submit your questions, and we'll answer them at the end of the show. So man, really excited to talk about today's topic.
Yeah. So I think we're gonna get right into it. We're starting with talking about Frost Giant picking up Kakao Games as an investor with 25 million. So Nate, you got any thoughts on that?
Oh, you just throw that straight to me.
You're just
Okay.
throwing right
Yeah,
to you,
man.
buddy.
We're
That's
throwing
it.
right
Yeah.
into the fire, dude.
Yeah, we're talking
You're going
we're
right
talking
at
about
it.
Cacao, we're talking about Cacao and then Frost Giant, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's awesome. I mean, I don't think that we've gotten too much more information like publicly from Frost Giant about their game or whatnot this year yet, but
Right.
I think they've already been teasing that some more information is coming in 2022. From what I've seen internally, I'm just happy that they're getting everything they need to keep doing what they're doing. We need that big RTS competitor, and even with the Microsoft news, I know we're going to end up talking about that, and people are excited about that. But competition and not being like, oh hey, Microsoft's buying us, and they're going to make us make StarCraft 3 great, whatever. It's like no, there is still the team of people who actually built what is StarCraft 2 right now that are coming after you. So I don't really know a whole lot about what Kakao talk or like what Kakao's gaming or business operations are. I've just used the phone chat app in my Korean classes and with some of the team league stuff that we've done with the Korean players. But Frost Giant getting this funding just says to me that what they're showing the investors is probably what they've been showing some of the internal testing people and like at the summits and stuff. So I was excited about it. So I'm not surprised to see that these guys look at that and like, we want a piece of it.
Yeah,
that's for
I'm pretty sure they're also a game studio too, right? If I'm not mistaken. Like they're both.
Have
I
they
did some quick
published
Googling.
anything that people play like in America that gets attention outside of the
I'm
our
not.
market?
I don't know. I don't know if it's outside of the South Korean market, but I
Yeah.
I
From
thought,
what I
I thought
read,
they were also
they're
a game
like one of the biggest publishers in South Korea, right?
But
If
then
I-
that's
if
pretty
I
big though,
understand.
right? That they're
Mhm.
investing
is
in
pretty
something that
big.
wouldn't just be for the local market. Obviously,
Mhm.
Yeah.
RTS is Koreans love it, but
Yeah.
Awesome. And what about you, Neuro? How are you feeling about it?
I find this entire deal to be completely unsurprising. The talent of the people in the Frost Giant studio, they've already made like great and amazing shit in the past. So it seems like a super safe bet. You have all these people concentrated under one roof trying to make something. It's going to be good, whatever it is. Like it might not be your game, but it's going to be a good game. So, yep, no surprise.
Yeah.
Feed the frost giant that it may grow strong.
Brown Bear, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great that they're receiving more funding to execute well on their vision. I actually don't really know anything about what they're making, so I hope that they have like a strong vision for their game that's like some strong creative vision, and hopefully this money allows them to execute on that vision well.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, really excited for it, man. Especially like the demo that they showed us like a few months back. Like just seeing like all the amount of units they're able to control
With
just
the
on one
units, yeah.
screen. Yeah, dude, that's crazy. And then we learned so much about Boyd. So now like every time I'm going outside and seeing all these birds fly, it's just like, hey, that's a Boyd. So yeah, man, great stuff for Frost Giant, dude. But yeah, so yeah, let's dive into the main chunk of our episode, the Microsoft acquisition. So yeah, when this was announced, it was major, incredible news. And this is something that I woke up to and was just in a complete state of shock, pretty much. Like, I was in a state of disbelief. It felt like the multiverse is happening, like, what's happening right now. And yeah, like, how are you feeling about it, Sal? Like, when you saw them like post that picture of the acquisition, like, what was going on through your mind?
Holy shit. I mean, I have never had like my expectations were so subverted because I don't know. I mean, something status quo for a really long time, and then it was just such a surprise. I couldn't believe that shit was real. And I mean, yeah, and they're moving full steam ahead as long as it doesn't get blocked.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they're in a good place to do it, and I think it makes sense from Microsoft's perspective as well. And I think clearly other like PlayStation agrees, like Sony agrees because they immediately went out and bought Bungie like right after as well. You're kind of heading into this like platform owns major studios situation, you kind of en masse.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, man. It really is.
Yeah, and like for Nathanias, like what was the first thing that you noticed in that picture, like when you saw it?
Well, I mean, like it's just the news itself is the biggest thing. I think that there's
Mm.
we've obviously in the StarCraft community been everybody's trying to be positive. People are trying to be excited about it. I think people were happy to see that StarCraft is acknowledged. They put a picture of that there instead of a Hearthstone or something else, I guess. I don't know. People get
Yeah.
sensitive about that kind of thing, but
Mm-hmm.
as far as Activision Blizzard's concerned, prior to this news, like the day before, is as much as we can try to sugarcoat things, and it's great that they were already talking about trying to like renew a contract or whatever with DreamHack and all that jazz. But the game itself, development project wise, was like
Right.
they buried it. They'd had the ceremony. They
Mhm.
got a nice golden coffin, and it was 6 feet under. There was absolutely no way Activision Blizzard was doing anything with StarCraft for a
Yeah.
long time. So
Yeah.
this is for StarCraft specifically. For me, I was like, this is the best thing that could possibly happen because Microsoft has already shown that they are fine with putting money towards studios that are building RTSs. And
Yeah.
coupling that with an RTS that would make them a lot more money than Age of Empires, it's a no-brainer that this is like that second life. This is the one up potentially for StarCraft. What does that mean? Does it become a good game? Do they do it right now? Do they do it in 5 years or 10 years? I don't know, but it's way more likely that something actually happens at all compared
Mhm.
to where we were a year ago.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, for a while there, yeah, I was starting to feel like all hope was lost, right? Like there's nothing happening, especially with all like the balance patches coming out at a very slow pace, and then for this to happen, it was just all that hopium just shot straight to my head. So I was super stoked to see it too, man. Nero, what was your reaction, man?
Well, the StarCraft being included in the announcement and stuff makes a lot of sense. I have a friend of mine who's worked in game development for the past 10 or so years, and he was kind of flabbergasted that Blizzard dropped development of StarCraft because it's such a strong IP. Like, even if you're not making another RTS, the lore and the characters are so strong that you can
Right.
make any number of types of games with StarCraft stuff in it.
Yeah.
And you could also go back in time. I've seen some people like, well, they wrapped up the campaign where Kerrigan becomes a god and everything is like finished and done. You could make shit earlier than that. You can make prequel content. It's a cool universe where there's a lot of potential for it. So if they want to invest in that direction, it's all packaged and now they own it. So they could do something pretty cool there. We'll see, but it was cool to see StarCraft being played on the Xbox channel. That happened, I think, the day of.
Day
Um,
of.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
The whole StarCraft community was in that chat, like, "Oh, we're ready for this."
That's I think that might have been as well. Shout out to Clutch. I know he works at the Xbox studio up in
Yeah.
Washington, and they try to put out like regular content. But it was awesome to see them be like, "Can we do?" The first thing that probably happened was they went in. He's like, "Can we do this? Can we make this happen?" Yes. Okay. Immediately. Like how
Yeah.
what else do you need to know that there are people out there that care and that are interested? I think even people that have never played StarCraft and don't even know what it is, you'd still have a hard time finding seasoned gamers that are like 30 plus that don't get you must construct additional pylons, right? Stuff like that.
Right.
Some things kind of transcend Zergling Rush, having those words in people's heads is something that makes having and owning an IP like that valuable.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And Brown Bear, were you able to catch that stream? Were you able to jump into it?
Yeah, it was pretty exciting. I think it's overall a good thing for StarCraft to have additional funding. If you look at the way that Microsoft has supported the Age of Empires franchise, it's provided money for additional development, both content-wise as well as tournament-wise. I think the acquisition as a whole. I think there are several reasons that companies acquire other companies, like whether it's existing revenue streams, whether it's taking control of intellectual property, acquiring talent, prestige. I think when you look at Blizzard, most of the talent that was responsible for building StarCraft has sort of left the company since over the past few years, and the company has sort of been like kind of woefully mismanaged, and a lot of negative stories have come out about the company. So I don't really think it's a talent acquisition. I think to me the most interesting question is like with this money that Microsoft is bringing to the table, if we assume that they provide, let's say, the same level of support that they do for Age of Empires 2 or 3 or even Age of Empires 4, who are they actually going to get to work on this game? And are they going to build like a Diablo 2 remastered, which was pretty successful, or are they going to build like Warcraft 3 Reforged, which was not successful?
A hot dude.
That's a different. To be fair, in the only thing I'd say about that is there is a difference between whether or not they have the devs that are capable of doing it and whether upper management says this needs to be done in half the time that you told us you need to make it. Because I don't believe that just because War Reforged ended up flopping, I don't think that doesn't mean that it couldn't have been good if they had given them the time and resources that they actually needed to finish it instead of rushing things. And hopefully that's some of the security blanket that Microsoft can offer to them to get back to polishing games rather than rushing them out.
So actually, Brown Bear, I had a question because you're probably much more in tune with the history of AoE 2 than I was. Like I kind of know roughly what happened, but not exactly. So when the news broke, like I had a lot of copium addicts in my chat that were like, this isn't gonna, nothing's gonna come from this. It doesn't really matter. And I was like, dude, like AoE 2, if I'm not mistaken, and you can help me fill in the gaps here, but AoE 2 was basically like completely abandoned. Like nothing gone on for years. Like it had a grassroots community, but not like it. And now it's had like balance patches and new saves added, and that's all just because of the Microsoft acquisition. It kind of felt like random. Like I don't know if that times out with the definitive edition launch. Like what kind of happened there? Because I think it mirrors the position StarCraft 2 is kind of headed into.
Yeah, it's a little bit complicated. So Microsoft was the publisher of the Age of Empires series. They owned, I believe, Ensemble Studios, which is the company that actually made the games. They then shut them down in 2009. So before Microsoft revived Age of Empires, they also killed it. And then over like the mid 2000s, late 2000s, Age of Empires 2 was always the most popular Age of Empires game because, in my opinion, it's the best game.
Right.
So it was like modded, and the community sort of supported it. And because there was enough community support, they eventually, greenlighted the release of the HD edition in 2013, which again was successful, and it ran on modern computers and so forth. And then Microsoft sort of slowly realized that there was a franchise worth investing in, so they helped found World's Edge, I believe, which is a studio that is just making Age of Empires titles. They helped, I think, buy or invested in Forgotten Empires, which specifically develops Age of Empires 2. They gave Relic the license to develop Age of Empires 4. So over the past few years in particular, they've helped provide a lot of funding for the creation of content for Age of Empires 3 and Age of Empires 2 that I think for Age of Empires 3 in particular is a very good example because I don't think that game really makes that much money for them. But nonetheless, over the past couple of years, it's received a lot of feature development. It's received a lot of new content. So they're definitely very supportive. They're just not like, if you look at the way Age of Empires 4 and 3 and 2 are developed, they're developed in very different ways and they're going in sort of different directions. And it seems to me like Microsoft kind of provides money, but sort of lets the studios that are making them make their own decisions as to how they want to move forward. And so it kind of is like, it's again taking that role of a publisher, like just kind of watching and using it as marketing, but like not really.
Right.
very hands-on, I guess.
Right. And with this acquisition, do you guys think like it'll allow for like other studios to come in and then like work on all these IPs that they just acquired? Like, how do you think that works? Like what do you think is going to happen?
I'm not an expert on mergers and acquisitions, but my father has worked as a CEO for multiple companies where he'll basically go into a tiny ship of a company and he'll build it up from, say, 15 to 25 people and turn it into like a 200-person company and then sell it. And what they typically do when they sell it, and this is obviously smaller scale than this Microsoft move that's been made, is they'll go in and they'll see for each different position in the strata, where do we want to put our own people to kind of oversee what's going on and make sure everything is good. The tricky thing is, as Nate was saying earlier, the StarCraft office is empty. So you would need more than just one oversight person. You would need like other people to actually build shit in there for that team. But
Yeah.
we'll see like how aggressive they are with imposing their own people versus letting the studios do their own thing. That's kind of a personality choice that Microsoft has. But based on what Brown Bear is saying, it seems like they have a pretty hands-off approach. We'll see.
Yeah. There's a lot of question marks about it. Who's if they do make that game, are they, who are they going to use to make it? And the reality, which is that it's probably not their number one priority when the merger is complete. All things going well, I think they said June of next year. But they've got some bigger things to sink their teeth into first, right? I mean, they're getting StarCraft, but they're also getting Call of Duty, which they're going to need to do a lot of work on to turn that ship around. All the mobile stuff, right? Because it's Activision, King, Blizzard, and if you don't know, like Blizzard's Candy Crush. In case you guys haven't known that for like the last 5 years, so there's going to be a lot of things that they're getting into. But I think the IP is also very valuable to them. And coming back to that conversation, as I'm sure you guys have heard about this, and I'm not going to go into the weird grifter side of this agenda, but with the future of gaming and with what people are trying to do, collaboration across brands is something that's been stupidly successful from a financial point. Like Fortnite with their endless crossovers, just printing billions of dollars, releasing every character from every game that's ever been in there. And I think that when you try to pick up a bunch of brands like this, because they also own like Crash Bandicoot now too, right? So if they decide that they want to make some sort of collaborative platform, now they could be like, well, yeah, you could be a Marine, you could be Master Chief, you could be Crash Bandicoot, you could be Dr. Dio Cortex, whatever, So it's not just them picking up these games, but they're going to use it for other stuff down the line, most likely as well.
Yeah,
Which would be good for
definitely
StarCraft, I think, anyway.
Right.
Keep it in the public spotlight, get people's attention on it, do something memey with it. Maybe it goes viral. Boom, there's a justification for another game.
One thing that seems like a general trend is a lot of these mega corporations like Sony, Microsoft, Apple, they want to basically have the consumer choose them and then have their stuff all throughout their house. So for whatever you need,
Yeah.
if you're a Microsoft person, you have Microsoft for everything. You play Microsoft games, use a Microsoft PC, Microsoft phone, etc. That's what they like to see because that means that you're fully engaged with kind of their side of the product. So the more
Right.
stuff they buy, the greater the chance that you end up just being a Microsoft person or an Apple person.
And that kind of leads into where I was sort of going to go with this next is that for Apple products, the iPhone is the center, right? You get hooked on the iPhone, and then all of a sudden you're hooked on like your AirTags and your AirPods, and you get the whole shebang. But for Microsoft, at least in the gaming space, it's clearly Game Pass, right? And that's kind of, I don't know when Game Pass started to become a thing, but I wonder if that times out a bit with AOE and their kind of interest in sort of reviving older titles, making sure that there's support. Because if there's a community and there are people there, and you can convince them to spend $11.99, right now the business model's changed. It's not about like, oh man, can I get you to spend $100 on this game one time this 1 year? It's, can I get you to spend $11.99 a month every month? And it doesn't really matter what you do. Like, do you play StarCraft? Do you play Age of Empires? Do you play AV4? Do you play Halo? Do you play like whatever many titles that they have on there? If you can just be convinced to continue to give them $11.99, then they can put their money wherever in their gaming ecosystem, and it seems justified as long as you're willing to stay. So like adding more content to StarCraft 2 kind of feels like to me it makes sense, because then all the StarCraft players might give you $11.99 a month just for new skins and updates and stuff that are cosmetic. Where before they wouldn't give you $11.99 because they had no reason to do such a thing. Right?
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you on that too, because I just recently refreshed my PC, and then as soon as you like load up Windows, you get that offer right away for like the free 1 month trial for like I think it's $1.99, and then after
$1.
that, like, yeah.
Cheeky
So I was just like,
bastards
dude,
got me.
that's freaking tempting, man. I think I'm about to like sign up for this, but no,
Yeah.
StarCraft's not there yet. But yeah, it was just really cheeky of them to do that, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, dude, like the barrier to entry and how they have it set up is just, I don't know, man. It's pretty crazy. And Brown Bear, what were you gonna say before I cut you off?
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah, I think that if Microsoft were to go in like a Game Pass type direction for StarCraft, I think that would be a positive development for the franchise. There's sort of been this movement in the games industry to move towards these sort of walled garden ecosystems. This is true for like mobile games as well, where like the company has more and more IPs, and you pay like a subscription fee for Game Pass, and then you sort of get everything. And sort of games like Age of Empires and StarCraft help fill out that long tail, so that people who sign up really feel like they can get access to like any sort of game. And the analogy that I use is like Netflix kind of follows the same model, where like I really like murder mysteries. And so Netflix often produces these like terrible low budget mystery movies, like Murder Mystery. It was this Jennifer Aniston, Adam Sandler movie. And it was like awful, but I loved it because I like murder mystery movies. And like that sort of content is watched by like not that many people, but it's enough to convince those of us who do watch it to continue watching Netflix. And like Netflix has this whole long tail of like you might consider bad content that nonetheless attracts, you know, all sorts of niche sort of viewers.
It's funny you bring that up, and I wonder what your take on this is then. Netflix clearly has an issue, which is that all of the content, or before it used to have an issue, and I think that's where what you're kind of touching on here is that they have all this content that's on their platform, except none of it is theirs. So, you know, when all of these like media companies get wise, what are they going to do? They're going to start their own Netflix, Disney Plus, HBO Max, like the list goes on. And then Netflix is going to lose all of that content. So Netflix is being in a desperate rush to greenlight as many projects as possible to fill out their content roster. So the inevitable day where everyone starts to slowly pull their titles back onto their own platforms, they're not dead because they have nothing to give, which is kind of the position I guess Steam is in, because like Valve has a couple games, but like Microsoft now is like actually kind of following exactly what Netflix did, which is that they are acquiring the IPs themselves, so that to push the content instead of having like other studios that they don't own on, they're trying to take over so that there's no risk of some exodus for a better deal or something. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been tricky. It's one of the things that I remember. I never got cable after I graduated from college because I was like, why would I pay $80 a month when I can pay, you know, $9 a month or whatever for Netflix? And then, you know, 10 years later, now I pay, you know, $10, $20 a month, I guess now for Netflix. Then there's Disney Plus, then there's Hulu, and then like it all sort of adds up again to $80. So I don't know if that will happen to Microsoft, where like, or in gaming in general, where you have to subscribe to a lot of these services. So yeah, I don't know. It seems like one of the differences between, I guess, PC or I guess gaming and like TV is that PC is like a relatively open platform, so you'll always have access to everything as long as you're willing to buy it outright.
Right.
But I guess maybe the subscription service, you know, would offer all of those choices as well. I don't know. I don't use Game Pass myself, so I don't know too much about it.
Yeah, and that was something I wanted to ask. How is that experience with Game Pass? Because I'm not a Game Pass user. I've never been in a position to go into their store and just get Game Pass. How's the experience for you guys? Like, how has that been like? Has it been easy? Is it easy to find games? Like, are there like suggestions? Because you guys are like mentioning Netflix too, and that might be like the same model. Like, do they offer you like, hey, because you played this one RTS, you might like that? How's the experience been?
I've never
Well,
used Game Pass.
My experience with these services, because I've tried them before, and for some of the content that I make, I actually use one of them because I think what they all are forced to compete even more with, like, before. The big difference between like the Netflix model and the old cable model is, first of all, even if it adds up to $80 a month, like after your year contract is over with Comcast, you're paying 200 for that. So it's still better than what we had, in my opinion. But they're forced to compete. They want to be the service that you're subscribed to. They know that people won't sub to all of them. They know that the strength of this kind of market is that you could just be like, oh, Netflix is dropping a show in February. Well, I'm gonna cancel my other ones and sub to that. And you could end up paying a lot of money if you don't have the patience for that, or if if you're comfortable enough that you're like, well, maybe I just won't watch it this month. Maybe I will, but I won't cancel it. But it's like, so one of the ones that I use is like, so EA has a thing for $100 a year. You can play the collector's edition versions of all of their shit, like everything that's on Origin, whatever you want to play. You decide that you want to play Sims 4 Pet Hotel and do that for 7 hours, and then play Battlefield, and then do Madden, and then play FIFA. You could literally do whatever you want. They don't have a cap on it or anything. You open their interface like it's anything else, except when you click on a game, it just says install instead. So the focus of these products is just to be as consumer friendly as possible, because it is a sector where they are actually competing with each other, because their only goal is that you sub to that and nobody else, or at the very least, if you have to unsub to someone, it's not them. But it's like Neuro was saying, and this is a very popular thing with most businesses, is that everyone's trying to get you to rent whatever you have. Everyone's trying to get you to make monthly payments above all else, because so many people will just not cancel it or put it on hold if they stop playing or pass away, whatever. There's, for whatever reasons, there's tons of people that are, I would not want to know the amount of money that gets spent monthly by people who have not used that service in over a year. But I would guess it's a lot.
Yeah, because on its surface, Game Pass makes so much sense financially, right? It's the cost, because I bought AoE outright, so I bought AoE 4 outright, and for that amount of money, I could buy 1 year of Game Pass pretty much, and then I could play AoE 4 and like 150 other titles, right? Like, you get a lot for your money. Like, it's no joke. You get a lot. You get a lot of stuff.
Does it concern you at all that also means that the actual developer is getting less money?
I mean, but are they though? Because it's a more sustainable amount of money. Like, if Microsoft is redistributing the money that they get from Game Pass, which they clearly seem to be, it's kind of like the question: would you rather $100 now or $11.99 for the rest of your life? Like, even though technically the devs, like, I don't know what the financials are behind the scenes. I don't know if these devs are being overworked, underpaid, but in theory, like, I would rather have a player base. Let's say, instead of 1 million people buying AoE 4, you have 300 million people paying $11.99 a month, and then Microsoft decides where to spread that money. Like, I think I'd rather that, right? Or, I mean, it's not the same, but I understand that it could be, right? It could be better.
If Microsoft is distributing through their own platform, they're also greatly reducing overhead, licensing fees, and all of that sort of stuff. And
Right.
because it is their studio, they can't, just bleeding them dry for nothing. That defeats the purpose of having the studio there to make the games, right? That just boils down to the quality versus, do we want our player base to enjoy us and have a reason to stay subscribed? It does put some degree of pressure for the people that are active and on top of that sort of thing. But, long term wise, the expectations of some sort of drop off has to be there, because the whole idea is that way more people are going to stay subscribed than unsub when they make a choice that's bad.
Yeah, I don't know really the underlying financials of how Microsoft distributes money from Game Pass. I just know that the music industry was the first to transition from like people buying CDs to like people streaming music.
Right.
And in that industry, the financials, it's become pretty clear that artists, even if when songs are played like a lot, don't make very much money.
Yeah.
I don't know if the same is true for Netflix, which came, I guess, after, but yeah.
But so Netflix specifically, I think these things are different because if I'm not mistaken, they're not generally play based. They're contract based. So like, you know,
Oh.
let's say a comedian
Yeah.
is putting out a special, they want to buy that special, they pay them up front, and then what they determine for the next contract is how well the first one did on their platform, right? That's what they use the metrics for, kind of. I don't think they go by play. They might be
Mhm.
bonuses, but like that's why you get like major franchises. So like take like Friends, for example. You'll have like Friends is on Netflix, and that's one of the major content drivers, and then it's the rights to it are bought by some other major player in the game, and then like, you know, Friends isn't earning money through click. They're earning money when they negotiate with like, you know, Amazon or whatever, whoever they went to. Like they're negotiating up front. Whereas Spotify is kind of different because you can get anyone putting up music, and then the clicks kind of, it's a more open platform in that way. I can't just
Yeah.
go put my show on Netflix. Like that's not how it works.
That's,
Right,
that would
like-
be man,
cool,
if I could
I'd
turn
watch the
just,
Sao show, dude.
just boot up OBS and just make your own Netflix channel, bro.
Yeah, like let's
how
just
sick
put
would
my
that
stream
be?
on Netflix.
Yo, guys,
That's
you
what
wanna
we want.
Guys, come watch my stream. Just open Netflix
Yeah.
and search Nate YOLO 420 Blaze it. Like
Yeah,
how
just a
crazy
sea
would
of
that
battle
be?
cruisers come across the screen.
It's like
I've no
you
one-
hover
yeah.
over it where you press play. It's just BCs.
Flying across the screen. Oh man. And you were tapping on something earlier too, Sal. Like you know, it was one of those things where like Blizzard was not in a good state, right? They were losing talent, or it might have been Brown Bear who said this, but
Yeah, I think Brown
they're
Bear was
losing.
on that.
Yeah, they're losing talent, and you know all the stuff that was going on. Blizzard was practically on fire, and I think Microsoft saw an opportunity to be like, "Hey, before it gets any worse, we can probably fix this." And instead of like waiting to just like wait for this company to be burned to the ground, essentially. So, do you think like Microsoft stepped in at the right time to just like be like, "We're not letting these IPs die," or like, how do you guys feel about it overall? Like.
Who wants to go first?
I'm not sure what their like stance is and mindset regarding like the scandals and the bad stuff that's happened under the roof. The question would be, do they think that they can impose a better workplace culture and basically soak the damage that's been done and
Yeah.
just kind of bring it back to honestly the really good name that Blizzard had in the past? Like it was a very strong name. You would go to BlizzCon, you're super proud. It's like a really amazing event, that kind of a thing. And then the next year there are protests, and then the next year there's more and more stuff. So we'll kind of see. But apparently they considered it to be not bad enough to avoid buying it. They're going to take the risk and soak it and see what they can do with it.
Yeah. And Nathanias, you mentioned that like you know it's not Activision Blizzard, you know it's King. That do you think that's what Microsoft was going for because of that? Their monthly active users on the King side is super high compared to all the you know compared to Activision and Blizzard. Do you think that's what one of the main interests was for Microsoft?
Yeah, well, it gives them a big into a market that they blew it in, right? I mean, they were trying to do all that stuff with their own phones, and obviously they wanted to have their own platform. They made up this whole like Windows X or whatever it was called. There was like a split off of DirectX 9 or something where they're like, you can port some of your stuff, you can make it on Windows, and then push it to a phone, and then Windows Phone users can play your game. This is kind of like, well, obviously taking King is like that's going to put you at the top of all of that. But I think it comes down to it's about making sure whether or not it's real, the illusion of value for people who subscribe to the service. Because if you can suddenly connect and they're like, well, if you have Game Pass, like you could play. I know you don't play Minecraft, but if you want to, you could. And the guy that's there, like, well, I guess I have a lot of options, right? Like if I want to play something, if I want to try something, there will be something I can try of all sorts of different types of things, right? You're like, well, I guess if I decide I want to play Candy Crush, I'll get a bonus or something like that, or you get the battle pass for it included. I don't play that game. I have no idea what it's some sort of match thing, but having that umbrella just cover as wide a net as possible is like the big goal that all these guys have, right? You even get some more slightly raunchy stuff coming out of like Disney these days because they're like, we want people who are interested in mature content to know that they can get it. No, they're like, oh, it turns out Deadpool actually made millions of dollars. Like, shit,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
having people curse in films does not actually cause them all to tank, right? And that net just has to keep spreading.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the timing of the acquisition is interesting. I mean, I think it really depends on the reasoning that Microsoft had internally for making the purchase. And I think there is different potential reasons. Like one is Microsoft, like many large tech companies, is sitting on a very large amount of cash. And this was a cash transaction they made to purchase Blizzard. And basically, they can't do anything with this cash because they can't repatriate it back into the United States because they would pay taxes on it. So that's what drove, like, for example, the acquisition of Minecraft a few years ago as well. So that could be one of the reasons they just want to get rid of this money and do something with it. Another reason would be that they want to acquire Blizzard's existing revenue streams, which largely consist of like loot boxes and card packs and Candy Crush, which
Right.
it's great for them
WoW
that they make money
subscription.
off of.
WoW subs, yeah.
Yeah.
Great that they make that
Microsoft
money.
owning World of
yeah.
Warcraft alone is massive. We would the entire industry would be just as like, holy shit, if the only thing they had done is like Microsoft just buys WoW off of Blizzard. Everyone would be like, holy crap, this is a huge deal with massive implications. And it, obviously we're already at a scale, 10 times the size of that.
Okay, so I have a question for you guys then. Do you guys think that they'll roll WoW subs into Game Pass, or do you think they'll make it like a Game Pass Premium or something to try and get WoW sub users to convert to Game Pass? Like, cause it's already a monthly sub.
But that's the plan. That's
Right?
what makes the most sense. Imagine that you're like you get a new even just think about it this way. The StarCraft, right? Let's just take it in a vacuum. You have a huge dedicated base of players that historically has gone between 1.5 million to 2 million over the course of 10 years without, at the very least, the data that we've seen or people like us have seen is up to like 2019, where it never really went below 1.2 million at any point. So if you can get the 100,000 people that play ladder every season or so if you can convince half of them that, oh, well, if you have Game Pass, you not only we get all this other stuff, but you'll get like an icon every season, right? Well, it'll count as a season pass, but you bundle all of these things together. Well, you could go play WoW if you want to, and then you can get into that ecosystem with their other transactions. And by tying all of it together, you're suddenly like, oh yeah, well, I get all these benefits in this game. It's like Twitch Prime. They just throw these million pop-ups at you. Like, hey, you got something free in this other game you've never played before, but maybe you want to check it out now because you got something free there that's included with what you're already paying for. And that's how, and then the claws sink in a little bit deeper, and suddenly you're trying out World of Warcraft because it doesn't cost you anything extra because you're already paying for Game Pass. And then you've bought a mount or some other skin in there, and now you're putting a ton more hours into there, and you're counting as a user who plays StarCraft and this other game now, right? And they're getting their money off of you. And yeah, you can, at least in my mind, that's the way that I see it going, where the whole idea is to just have as many people under this one thing as possible, and just everyone's like, well, I'm getting too much value out of this to cancel it. Now, if I cancel Game Pass, I lose my StarCraft ladder rewards, I lose my WoW sub, I lose my Candy Crush bonus. I have to wait my energy limit again, and suddenly canceling that one subscription hits like 7 different things that you do. And I think that's where their goal is, to get to that place where you're canceling it would mess with too many of the games that you like to play.
Yeah.
And Bramber, what do you think?
I think that's a really, really smart way of looking at it. I had never really thought about it in that way, where it's almost that fear of loss of like you acquire all of these like gameplay experiences, and then you suddenly like don't want to cancel because it's so valuable. I think that's
Right.
actually a really good direction to take it in. And I think that if they see like the acquisition of more niche genres, whether it's Age of Empires, StarCraft, what have you, that help build up that value proposition, I think that would be good for StarCraft, and it would give them good financial incentive to continue developing it as well.
I just did a quick price check. It's $10 a month for Game Pass, and it's 15 for a WoW sub. So that could incentivize more people to re-up their WoW sub if they quit at some point down the line.
Yeah.
Exactly. I making a purchase like this, instead of trying to do some cheap gamble on a new IP or revive something that's dead or do Halo Wars 3, says to me that they want to have the good options available, and taking a consumer focused approach with what you're creating for people and being willing to spend that money to get the users. You know, you can run into some issues with the fragmentation, but since they own the IP, they don't have the problem of Netflix. StarCraft isn't going to go anywhere. WoW isn't going to go anywhere. Hearthstone's not going to go anywhere. They own all of it. So you bake all of that together, then you tie them into your other game ecosystems, and yeah, like the EA thing again. Just going back to that, you can play, like, just for example, you could play Madden like 3 days early without it's just say you're already subbed. Like, you wanted to play Battlefield, you didn't want to buy the $100 version. You know that there's going to be a new one next year, so you pay $100 for this year sub, or you pay $10 a month or $7 a month or whatever it is. You get all of that content, all the DLC that comes out for the game, everything except in-game purchases, or like the only thing that they won't just give you, the currency. And then this other game comes out. You get to play it 3 days early. You get the collector's edition version with all the whatever crap is included with that. And you're suddenly like, well, you know, it for the company itself, it's not like they run out of bonus cards to give you for Ultimate Team. But by incentivizing you with, hey, here's all this free crap for the pay to win mode. We're going to give you a bunch of free stuff every month for the pay to win mode. What does that do? It gets you to even if you don't want to play it, you might be like, oh, I wonder what I did get. And then you open it, and that's it. They only need X percentage of people who just check it out, even if they weren't originally interested in the first place. All they need is, you know, there's a number that they have internally that's like, if 20% of people that we trick into clicking on this end up playing it, and we convert them into paying users, we win, right?
Right.
So, you know, it's still in a way like you're looking for whales, but you're getting people in first with something that's a lot easier to swallow.
Right. And Neuro, like, being an active player for like WoW, like how is that community feeling? Like, are they feeling the same excitement as we are?
So it's kind of a mixed bag. The retail scene right now, I think, is very grumpy with the way that their content flow has been. They're just not happy with the most recent expansion. Apparently they have to like redo a bunch of stuff to get powerful items, and it feels like their work is useless and fruitless. The story overall, I think, it is kind of a mixed bag. Some people like it, some people don't. The Burning Crusade community is pretty strong. That's what I play. I don't play retail. I play TBC Classic. It's kind of interesting to see these legacy games and just how the design philosophy was really different. One thing that was a major difference between the first few iterations of WoW and modern WoW is they really expect the standard player to be a lot sweatier, like to invest a lot more hours and time to get the most value out of their character. Whereas in the more modern sense, they expect people to work, studies, and they don't have a ton of time for stuff. So a lot of things are fast tracked to get the items and things that you want. So I would say overall, because of how nasty the Blizzard Activision news has been before this point, they see it as, I can only see this as a side grade or an upgrade. I can't really see this being worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. What's like if from the StarCraft people are like, is this good or bad for StarCraft? I'm like, what are we getting? What are we getting that right now that you're afraid of losing? What do we have? What are they going to do? Turn off half the NA servers and suddenly like the ping is normal now? Like, is that the worst case scenario, that America's becomes like US West and East? Like, that's going to just end the world? No. You know, that's like, that was the only thing you can take away. Like, there's nothing else we're getting that just stops. The esports thing comes out of an entirely different budget and conversation.
There were so many mad, like, people who just were in denial that it would do any good, and I was like, how could it be worse? Like, aside from them just pulling the plug, be honest. Like, what could possibly be worse? Like, the game hasn't been patched in like over a year. They're like, it's a struggle to update ladder maps. They have to like get some poor intern who was doing coffee runs to like learn some scripts to like port it over. And then when they do port the maps over, they have to add like 50 cleaning robot doodads to like piss you off.
Dude, quick rant. Yesterday, I'm laddering in my tryhard stream. The Reaper from the Terran goes into my base, and instead of my queen attack moving at the Reaper, which would have killed it with the next attack, there was a cleaning bot where my mouse cursor ended up, and I attacked the cleaning bot twice, and the Reaper escaped.
Twice!
1 HP.
Dude.
Now, remember that it's very important in these, when we talk about this stuff in StarCraft, you have to do victim blaming. So, Neuro, I just want you to know it's your fault because you didn't make a special keybind that would allow you to rapid fire left click with holding down a random key outside of where you would normally want your hands to be on your keyboard. Okay, so just so you know, it's entirely your fault. It's something that can be played around, and that means it's not a problem. Kappa.
So I actually asked the map maker. I think I asked Killer Smile and maybe Time about this, and they were like, they looked me dead in the face. They're like, those bots weren't there before going into QA, and I was like, what? Like, how is that humanly possible? Like, they like didn't add maps for like months, and then they add the same maps as just the cleaning bots. Like, I couldn't. My brain was just incapable of comprehending the
Blizzard Engine
Roombas.
finally did something, dude. Blizzard
Yeah,
Engine finally did
he was like,
something.
I need to earn my wage. So he went in, just dropped a bunch of cleaning bots.
Gonna make this map look cute, yeah. And with that said, with like this is like one of the acquisitions that actually made me like pretty happy. You know, I wasn't worried about it. I was like, okay, cool. This is finally a step in the right direction for this company because it was, you know, yeah, like I said earlier, it felt like it was in shambles, and I'm seeing all this stuff on Twitter from all these like past employees and current employees and all the stuff that they're dealing with. So I was just like, dude, okay, that's you know, I'm more at ease. But with this whole acquisition thing, is there any chance like of a government blocking this because you know you're essentially sucking up all these IPs, right, and all these games, and you're buying this huge company? Like, what are the chances of that happening?
Extremely low. Do you want to know why?
Why?
Because
Why?
people who have been elected into office need help making decisions on how to vote for stuff. And there are groups with heaps of money who are willing to support their super PAC and their next campaign for their next election who can help them make those decisions.
Yeah, you know what's also interesting about that, Neuro, is I think there's a CEO worth billions of dollars who doesn't play video games that runs a video game mega corporation, who I believe is one of the top donators to these groups. Isn't that interesting? I wonder what he's gonna tell them they should vote on this, huh? Whether they let this pass or not.
Huh.
Yeah. You know, it almost reminds me about when T-Mobile and AT&T or T-Mobile and Sprint merged, and people were like, "Well, this is clearly a huge monopolistic issue." And then the CEO just stayed at Trump Hotel for 3 months, and the merger got approved. So I'm sure they'll do their due diligence in making sure no corporation gets too big.
Okay, so then I have a question. Assuming that doesn't happen, okay? Imagine that the world was true and good and moral, okay? Do you think there's a case for blocking the merger between the two companies? Let's start with Brown Bear. What do you think? Do you think there's a case for blocking the merger?
Well, I think it's challenging to make an antitrust sort of claim when in a market that's as competitive and diverse as the gaming market.
Right.
So I think it would be a challenge. I think one of the factors to consider, though, is that both Microsoft and Activision Blizzard are global companies. So it's not clear to me whether other countries would have a legal case to make an antitrust case. I remember recently there was an acquisition that was blocked by a British regulator. It was two American companies buying each other. I forget what it was. But
It's not Nvidia ARM, is it? I think that's been
Uh,
blocked or something along those
Oh.
lines.
That was
It-
one of them.
that was blocked by
Yeah.
a British regulator, right?
I'm pretty sure. Like, this is my I browsed this and now I wish I hadn't said anything moment. Yeah, I know the deal fell through, okay? But like whether or not God struck it with a lightning bolt or fucking, you know, some regulator said no, I'm not sure.
Yes, I'm not familiar with antitrust laws outside. I mean, I'm not a lawyer in any case, but I'm not
Right.
familiar
We're
with
just
antitrust
musing
laws.
about the state of things. What about you, Neuro? What do you think?
Based on just how money flows around, I don't think anyone's going to step in the way of this. If you're thinking about like a monopoly on gaming, they're pretty far off. Like this isn't
Right.
going to give them complete control over, well, I guess everyone's playing Microsoft games now. It's not
Yeah.
super hard to avoid playing games under this banner at this point. There are a lot of really strong studios and then other mega corporations that own a bunch of studios that you could play their games instead. So it just seems like the biggest fish are growing and they're just absorbing more of the smaller fish, and that's kind of the trend. But they're still really big relative to each other, so it's fine.
And Nate?
the gaming industry and the gaming market is one of the most competitive out of, if you just look, if you try,
Right.
you don't have to make a direct comparison, but if you look at any other industry, you're like, is the video game market more open and competitive than phone manufacturers? And you're like, well, there's only two big players in phone manufacturers. They have all their own antitrust stuff. People are like, should Apple completely own phone stuff? Does Samsung get enough representation? Blah blah blah. And then nobody talks about pretty much anybody else in that space unless you're an enthusiast who really researches that market on your own. But for games, like I think the average person can name a bunch of companies. Be like, well, there are tons of great independent studios that are still competitive without being owned or being a part of these corporations like Capcom, and there are others out there and stuff like that. So when it's like, oh, one game company's buying another, but there's still like 10 major studios that are putting out big hits, and probably what helps these guys' case even more is that at least once a year, some indie dev puts out something that gets super popular and makes a ton of money, and they can point to that and be like, how can you say we're anti-competitive? Like, these random guys are able to put up better numbers than us on this.
Right.
This isn't, us doing what we're doing doesn't affect some guy releasing another Valheim and making millions of dollars and pushing something else. And there will probably be some other game that pops up this year that will be like, well, there you go. An indie studio puts out something great again because the guy in charge cares about having a decent product more than he does about trying to make money immediately.
Yeah, so I think my understanding of why this could be monopolistic or like pretty close, not like actually a monopoly, but closer to like a duopoly, is that Microsoft also owns Windows, which is like, and they also have the Game Pass. They have basically they own and they have Xbox. They own like multiple platforms, and the worry is that some of the Blizzard Activision titles, and there actually are a lot of other studios in the list that they acquired here, and do they also own Bethesda?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So like the list of content, of like AAA content that they're getting their hands on, that they could just yoink from every other like platform that you could buy now that they have this ability, is getting quite high. So like they could just take COD out, like they could just obviously the PC ports are easy, but anything that they have their hands on that are on consoles, they can just move them over. So it's kind of like they're sort of own the content and the rails. Like they don't just own all of these game companies anymore. They also own one of the major consoles you play it on, and Windows, which is run on most PCs as well. So like I think there's a conflict of interest kind of there that maybe would spark something. And obviously, like, you guys know that PlayStation then bought Bungie like right away, right? So like clearly they're feeling some threat. And yeah, like, and it kind of, to the credit of this like perspective, I think Microsoft, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think Microsoft actually came out and was like, no, listen, we'll honor all of our previous like contracts to put these titles on PlayStation and whatnot. So they're clearly worried about somehow getting in the way of, or having these, like, this idea get in the way of the merger, right?
This they have to. This is the type of grandstanding
yeah.
these companies absolutely have to do.
Yeah.
Because I like following these types of merger type stuff, and I'm just gonna go back to like when T-Mobile and Sprint in the U.S. went down, and it went from 4 carriers to 3. They're like, well, this is going to make everything cheaper. We promise we're not going to raise prices. Everybody's going to have way better coverage. Here's what our new map is going to be. Pretty much none of those things really end up happening the way that they say. Like they did end up transferring their spectrum over, so they had a little more bandwidth in some places, but it's not like they just gave everybody colossal discounts across the board. The only thing I think that they ended up committing to was not forcing people off of their old contracts from before the merger, and that's basically it. So Microsoft is going to promise the moon and back as far as all this stuff goes. That's why they're probably gonna keep BattleNet up for a bit. They're not gonna immediately move all that stuff to Game Pass because they don't want people to feel like the distribution platform is monopolized by the operating system. Which I love that you guys brought up Windows, because I'm like, that's one reason why they'll probably keep that stuff up for as long as they can. But as soon as all of this is completely done and completely over, and there's no chance of turning it around,
Yeah.
everybody should expect a couple of those promises to go poof.
Right.
That's just what happens with this stuff.
So yeah, like so with that said, the deal's set, to the end of 2023. And Bobby Kotick is going to be there. Do we see do we see any chance of how long he'll be there? Do you think he'll potentially be there after, or I don't know, what do you think is going to happen during all this while he's still CEO? I'm pretty sure he's just going to take a stand back and just write it out, right?
They basically said that he doesn't have the overall head decision making part during this process. Like he's going to be reporting to, I think, Phil Spencer or whatever, right? The CEO of Xbox Gaming or Microsoft Gaming. So he's not completely in control of that stuff, but I guess it probably has to do with they don't want to just put somebody else in charge of everything there. They don't want to have somebody else go deal with all of that right now. Or I don't even know what the legality of that's like. Could the CEO of the purchasing company just go in there and set up an office in their studio right now and start acting like he owns it, even though the deal's not finalized? That's probably also something that we have to consider. So as much as I'm looking forward to seeing Bobby Kotick gone, there might be too many issues. Like if this deal doesn't go through, they have to pay Activision Blizzard like a couple $2 billion or something like that. And then if they didn't have a CEO, or if their figurehead was a Microsoft employee, then suddenly if this deal falls apart, they just there's no head of the company, right? And they're kind of left scrambling. So
Right.
I think that's why this ends up being a painful, long process. And he probably won't be gone, barring more insane drama. He probably won't be gone until the deal closes, like everybody's been saying.
So so reporting has shown that he is probably going to leave afterwards, right? Cobra brought it up right now. Do you guys agree? Do you think he's out? Do you think he's screw it?
That pretty much
too much.
always happens. Anytime a bigger company buys a smaller company, the CEO of the smaller company is no longer the CEO. That it has to happen if you're actually buying them. So they usually give them some lower role with less pay, and they usually just leave for their own personal interest because they don't like having a weaker role than they had before.
Yeah. It's not like the guy's hurting for money either.
No, he's made his bank.
At some point, he could just say, I have enough billions to just go live a great old life and do whatever I want.
Right.
Or maybe he'll just go turn some other company into a husk for money. We'll find out.
On occasion, there are acquisitions, especially talent-driven acquisitions, where they keep the acquiring company's CEO in their place, and oftentimes allow them to keep their title of CEO of XYZ subsidiary, just because the company wants to acquire the talent from that company, and oftentimes the company wants to be acquired so that they have more resources to do what they're doing. I think in this case, I don't think it's a talent-driven acquisition. I don't think Microsoft bought Blizzard so they could have Bobby Kotick. I think that would be insane. And also Blizzard's not a small company, so they don't need Microsoft's resources to do big things. So I agree.
Right.
I don't really think that they necessarily need him, and it would be surprising to see him stay in that job.
Yeah, those offices is as much as it's all connected and they're all tied together. Activision's offices are not right next to Blizzard's offices. Blizzard has that straight up college campus worth of space in Irvine where they've kind of done their autonomous thing, basically just reporting to Activision financial people since they were in control in terms of that stuff. So it's not like they have to suddenly try to bring everything together and move all the Blizzard people up to, they don't have to move and relocate all these people over to Redmond. I mean, I guess they could, but there may not be an incentive or a need to do that. So they have a lot of infrastructure and resources that they're getting on top of that. Just even if they wanted to build their own campus, they could just replace Blizzard and be like, oh, we finally have a place to put our shit down there now.
I mean, it's in their best interest that Blizzard makes the best possible games too, right? Unlike with Activision, that's not the case. It's whatever makes the most money. Put in as little effort as you can to get past the bar that people will pay, and then just sort of leave it. Right? War 3 Reforged feels like exactly that mentality, and it's kind of exactly what happened.
It's a Nintendo strategy, Sal. It's a Nintendo strategy.
Well,
you guys will keep buying it. You guys will keep buying it. There's no incentive for us to increase the quality past what we want.
I'm about to leave my host role and come down here, okay? What the hell is this shit? Nah, Nintendo.
Sometimes people don't try as hard because they know that they have a very loyal fan base. There's you know how many people must have pre-ordered War Reforged, and how many people got screwed and were happy to get screwed.
What was the last Nintendo
brand loyalty to that degree is very valuable as well. Is all I'm saying.
I concede that Nintendo's hardware division has this problem, but I cannot concede that their game
They
development
do
has
make
this
they do
problem.
make some great games.
Okay.
They do make some great games, but
What was the
my
last
point isn't that their
Nintendo
games are
branded
bad.
game
My point
that was
isn't that their games are bad, Sal. My point is that there are people who will
That'll
buy,
just buy it?
literally anything they release because they love that shit. I tell you, if they announced a new Zelda today, I'm gonna pre-order it, I'm gonna buy it, I'm gonna play the crap out of it, no matter how terrible it is, because I love that stuff, and
That's
they
fucking
know
true.
that. They're
All
aware
right.
of that.
Yeah.
I can see
That's what
this
I'm
is
getting
true.
at. They didn't need to finish Warcraft Reforged because a bunch of people were more than happy to give them their money a year in advance for an unfinished game.
Yeah.
And the same thing
Yeah.
happened when they announced Diablo 2 remaster, and they said, "Here's everything we're gonna ship." And then 3 months before, actually, this isn't gonna make it. We might not add this feature, but hey, the game's almost out, and everyone's like, "Well, it runs well enough." So there you
Right.
go. People are
Is
more
that what
than
they
happy
call
to throw their
laughing all the
money
way
in.
to the bank?
StarCraft remastered. Where's that team ladder? Is anybody out there?
That's true. I don't know if that changes with. I think that definitely changes with a change in business model, right? Like it definitely. That's it. They're just incentivized by different things. So like now you want to keep Warcraft 3 players, and releasing Reforged and leaving it that way is not how you keep Warcraft 3 players. That's how you make them begrudgingly trudge back to ladder and proxy Void Ray my ass for like the 50th time. Because you just don't want to play StarCraft, but you don't want to play Warcraft either. So like you're just there, making my life miserable with batteries.
Voidcraft.
Yeah,
you go.
Voidcraft.
Legacy of the Void, man. So with this whole acquisition too, like, do you think they're going to still maintain, I guess, their development practices? You know, because prior to that, like you were saying, Warcraft 3, you know, it was rushed. You know, it was just put out there, and if it runs, right? So now with being under Microsoft's umbrella, do you think they'll be like, okay, you guys need to chill, just develop at your own pace, just please put out a good game? Like, do you think they'll?
Well, I don't think, you know, before we cut to everybody else, like I don't really think that the team wanted to do that. Like I
Mhm.
don't think like anyone who works on something and cares, no one wants to release something that everyone is gonna fucking universally hate.
Yeah.
Like
Where does the
so,
scope
like,
of that project come from, though, Sal? What do you? That's the. I think that's an interesting thing, though, because it always comes down to we can't get the budget, or they don't. They end up telling us
Well,
the
but
time
that's-
frame. But is
yeah.
there a level where the developers need to limit the scope of what they're trying to do in anticipation that they probably won't make it past
Okay.
80%?
But at least in fairness to this particular IP, right? Like you cannot release a product worse than the original. Like you can't. It's just illegal. It's just not allowed. Like you have to at least release the very thing that you're remastering, right? You can't be Warcraft 3 Downgrade. Like that's a terrible title. Like Underforged. That's not, you know, it's
You
more brittle. Like this shit doesn't work. It has to at least meet the bar. Like it has to release with the features that the original had. So like with new titles, yeah, I mean obviously, right? Like I remember some really good advice I got in like a 3D modeling class is like, you know, eventually you'll get to the part where you're working on like a part of an image that no one can see anymore, but only you know is there, and at that point you should probably stop, right? But like if I just drop a blob on a table, I'm like this is a well-constructed masterpiece. Like that's not a well-constructed masterpiece, and I probably should have gone further than that. Right? That's so yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. And how do you feel about this, Nero?
Can things get worse? Maybe.
Hmm.
We'll see. I think the big question mark is what direction do they end up throwing their money in, and what level of polish do they expect for things that they ship? I think that's a big difference in preference for studios is what percentage do we ship our game? Do we ship our game at 80%? Do we put it in beta at 90%? Like when do we put it out there? Because that can have a pretty major effect on the community reception, and getting it out early, that can give you initiative over other games where you get people plugged in and they get invested in your game. So that can be a plus, but it can be kind of broken. I think Cyberpunk was a huge example of that, where the hype wave was this tsunami of people were like, this is going to be the coolest game that's ever been made. And they shipped it probably a little bit too early. Like maybe
Little?
they shipped it at like 78% or something, and if they just gave it another year, it would be a lot stronger. But they felt the pressure of, we gave ourselves this date, so we feel like we have to ship it, otherwise people are going to be mad. They're going to be mad
Right.
either way. Are we going to have them be mad because we release games too early and they're broken, or because we don't release games fast enough and they really want them?
Yeah,
So
and
actually, I have a question.
I
Oh,
think.
sorry. Go ahead,
Sorry.
Nate. Yeah.
I was just going to say, to add on to what Neuro's saying, because you're totally right about that, and I think that's a part of the problem that comes up is like the scope of what you're developing, because that game started dev, we know, a really long time, like way before, and then within like the final year or two of development, suddenly they're like, well, oh, people can do ray tracing, Nvidia's giving us extra money to put this feature in, right, to do their RTX stuff, which they couldn't have planned on having that originally,
Right.
because it wasn't possible, it wasn't feasible, and even on launch, it still really wasn't. Like, even with the 3090, if you put on ray tracing, you get 30 FPS, and you could do all the stuff that you want to try and
Yeah.
make it work. But that's part of the trap that they fall into, because suddenly you're putting in a ton of the dev hours to implementing features that are more modern, because the game has taken so long to make. And I think that I hope that Microsoft can have Blizzard at least focus on a proper scope for what the projects are supposed to be, so that they're not adding on too much or getting too ambitious, where things that are basic features like a profile, for example, or
Yeah.
having a functioning
Mhm.
ladder get lost because some guy's like, well, I don't know. What if the UI was animated and had like monkeys jumping around trees behind the screen instead of doing that? Like, no, nobody would prefer for it to look 5% better in exchange for a basic feature missing.
Right. So actually, I have a question for Brown Bear, because we kind of wanted to go into the fact that now, like, Microsoft has a really strong, what feels like almost monopoly on RTS, like at least competitive RTS, right? Because I looked on Steam and there's a lot of other RTS titles out there, and like there are billions and stuff. But for competitive RTS, Microsoft owns like quite a bit now. But speak like kind of transitioning into there, I feel like AoE 4 was shipped at like maybe 80%. And I know that there's been a lot of complaints from the community, but I think Brown Bear, you've done quite a bit of analysis on it, and like I think you've got like do you have a video on AoE 4's state as well, I think? So like how do you feel about how AoE 4 was launched, like, and do you feel like it kind of follows that trend of like shipping a game too early, and I think it's kind of bitten them in the ass, like
Mhm.
with their player base, and sort of stalled the momentum that they had. But yeah, your take will be better than mine.
Yeah, yeah. I put out a brief video with my thoughts on AoE4. I think Age of Empires 4 is very unique, I think, in the competitive RTS market, because it's the first game that I've played in probably since StarCraft 2, where I feel like it has a real creative vision behind it. It's not just
Right.
trying to copy what came before. It actually has like a direction it's trying to go in, which I thought was very admirable. But unfortunately, as you mentioned, the game is unfinished. The game was in development for a long time. It was in development for at least 4 years. You can't click on things. That seems like a basic issue. It's like a lot of the basic features aren't done. The campaigns are like kind of copy pasted. I think that game is a great example of, and I think like Microsoft's kind of hands off approach. Like it's hard for me to tell like how much pressure they put on Relic to ship it before it was ready,
Mm,
but it certainly feels to me like within the first 10 seconds of playing the game, you feel like something is wrong because you can't click on things. And it's just
yeah.
surprising to me that someone would make a decision and say like, okay, let's go ahead and ship this.
It's ready.
Yeah.
So do you think? I think a good strategy would have been like to do the beta and then probably take like another year, like because the feedback had to be like that. There's no way that everyone was like, you know what, let's ship it. Like this, I don't know. Like yeah, certain stuff, just as simple as like you double click your hotkey and you end up in the middle of two groups of units, even if one group has 100 units and the other group has one lonely boy. Like you still end up in the middle of nowhere. Like the stuff like this kind of drove me nuts. Stuff with the UI, I've complained about that a million times, but yeah, I guess kind of leading from there. What do you think about Microsoft having? What do you guys think about Microsoft having so much RTS? And what do you think that they're gonna do with that? Do you think more iterations gonna come out of that, or do you think they'll maybe pare down and like focus on a couple of them instead? Like, what do you think's the dream?
I think one of the most interesting aspects of the Age of Empires 4 release is that if you look at the player base numbers for all of the other Age of Empires games, they didn't move at all. So they're all stable. And Age of Empires 4 is just like this whole boatload of new players, which are, players kind of returning to the genre or players discovering the genre for the first time. So I think what's great about RTS is it doesn't feel like it's at a point where it's like saturated. It feels like
Right.
if even if one company owns all the RTS, they don't even really compete with each other. It's just they all have their own sort of audience. StarCraft has its own audience, and so it's just happily just develop all of them, and there's no cannibalization. Like there's no threat of like, oh, if we develop StarCraft, we're gonna hurt Age of Empires. Like I don't think there's any overlap there.
RTS is a fairly broad genre as well. It's not like
Right.
if another RTS shows up, everyone moves. I think Age of Empires is a really good example of for certain StarCraft people, it really hooked them and they really like it. And some people even now they main Age of Empires 4. For
Yeah.
other people like myself, I wasn't super hyped when it was announced, and I actually ended up playing it for the first time because I got critically annoyed from my chat hassling me about playing it. And then I played it, and it's pretty good. Like I had a good time, but it didn't hook me in the same sense of, ooh, I want to
Yeah.
get good at this. I was like, okay, I want to go back to ladder. So I think for different RTS games, it depends on what niche within RTS you're trying to strike. They Are Billions hit the survival aspect really well, where people who they want the RTS feel of building up their defenses and that kind of a stuff, but they
Yeah.
don't want to get flamed by an opponent, and they also don't want the volatility of playing against a human player who does like weird shit. They like that consistency, so that provides like a good aspect within RTS where it's still in the genre, but people who play They Are Billions to survive, they're looking for a very different experience than people who play ranked 1v1 StarCraft ladder, for example.
Yeah.
And in Billions, you could pause, right? Which is a really big difference. Like when things get overwhelming, you can like put the brakes on and think about it, and then like continue from there.
Mm-hmm.
And Nate,
Yeah. With RTS stuff, like managing expectations is always really difficult. Like if you play StarCraft and you like to play StarCraft ladder, you don't play, nobody just plays StarCraft ladder from a purely strategical mindset perspective. There's a mechanical aspect to it that is necessary to progress or become better. You have to be able to play to a certain speed. You have to be able to deal with all sorts of random stuff that people can throw at you. And a game like They Are Billions, it's a little more straightforward, but there's it's a whole different way that you're approaching solving a problem rather than I'm trying to mechanically overpower someone or outthink somebody else. It's
Right.
more of like, oh, it's like I have a puzzle and I can put my pieces here and set things up in a way that I can be successful. And maybe it works and maybe it doesn't work. And that's like the gameplay flow that you're like, okay, well, something got through. This spot wasn't as well set up as I thought it was. And then Age of Empires is a totally different thing because the map is completely random. There's a lot of variables that change every game, pretty much no matter what kind of strategy or thought process you have going into it. That the amount of permutations of matchups that you can have in a random 1v1 is huge with the number of factions that there are. But as somebody that has played Age of Empires since I was a little kid, the expectation from I think a longtime fan is also different. Where when Age of Empires 4 dropped, I'm like, is this game going to look and feel cool when I have a ton of guys going to charge in an open field against somebody else? Is it going to feel dope to like set up this wall and this big siege line and kind of slowly take over the whole map and mine it out? For me, the answer is yes. Like balance wise, that's not the kind of thing that I don't know how many Age of Empires players get crazy about that, but I have like a totally different expectation out of playing that game than I do anything else. Like I don't expect Age of Empires has BS in it. I expect it to have BS. I expect there to be some dumb stuff, but I'm looking for something completely different out of that gameplay than I am from StarCraft. And that's how I personally enjoy both of them.
No, that's pretty interesting that you said that because me as like a really interested StarCraft player, I was expecting to go into AoE4 with all the familiarities of like being able to like hotkey and stuff like that, and be able to control my units the same way, and just have all those same familiar. I'm gonna avoid that word. Anyways, something similar.
Familiarities.
Yeah, familiarities. See, if I say it slow, it works. Familiarities. But yeah, like I was, you'd expect all that, and then I think come the time of AoE 4, it was enjoyable. It is what it is, and some people switched over, some people didn't. what I'm excited to see is, now that we're under the Microsoft umbrella, is this internal collaboration. Will the game improve because you have, games like StarCraft? Are these teams able to come together and be like, hey, how did you do this thing? Okay, yeah, we're having problems with our game. Like, how can we fix this? Do you think that's a possibility there? Do you think that'll happen?
Doesn't that predicate that StarCraft has a team? Like,
Just Blizzard intern, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
Sad.
I don't know. It is sad. Actually,
No,
I
lots of
almost
words,
feel
dude.
like that's who you ask to help with the StarCraft conundrums. It's like, you guys got anybody?
oh man, I know. It's just like we had this game for 12 years. We lost our entire team. Can you give us anybody at this point?
Right.
The thing
But,
that I think would be the big plus for StarCraft is if they focus their efforts on allowing the community to build stuff for the game. Kind of like how the Team Liquid map contest works, where the maps
Mhm.
are new content, but they're not content that's made by Blizzard Activision or whoever. They're made by just map makers in the scene. And they end up being voted on and looked over, and then they get put into the game. If they could streamline that process, I feel like we can take care of ourselves. If we could make our own skins, make our own maps, it's fine.
Right.
I'd be happy
Oh,
with that.
yeah.
I would definitely
Yeah.
love to see. I remember when Apex Legends first came out, it was a really, really surprising success. And then they had a lot of problems with cheaters. And so, because Apex was owned by like EA as their parent company, EA sent like a lot of their security engineers to help them. And I don't know if that actually translated into anything, but it's nice that EA, being the larger company, was able to help them with that. For me
Did they sort it
personally,
then?
I'm sorry.
Like, did they sort it? Like, has the cheating down a lot after that?
I personally don't really play the game. I just know that there's a
Right.
lot of cheating
Because
currently.
that's really sick. Like
Um,
that they went to that they sent a bunch of engineers. Like, that's really awesome.
Yes, it got a lot better. I can
Okay,
speak
cool.
from experience on this point. It's
yeah,
not
right.
perfect. It still has cheaters. Every online multiplayer does these days, especially shooters, it seems, but
It's too
it got a
much
lot
money
better,
at
yeah.
stake.
They also
It's too much-
dedicated a
too much
specific
money.
person to go and monitor some of the big streamers that were getting stream sniped a lot. And the people that he got against, his name is Nick Merckx, he would get matched up against stream snipers that would intentionally go after him. And some of those people were also cheaters. And so they put a dedicated PR person to go after and try to clean up a lot of the trash. And that helped their PR image a lot and discouraged others from doing it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
StarCraft could use that. if you could send an intern down to like help delete the lag hackers, that'd be sweet.
They have such a huge opportunity too. Like I'm sure you guys have all seen like the Simu's tweet about like save StarCraft and all that jazz. Like
Yeah.
imagine the slam dunk opportunity that you have to have a guy who will probably be willing to work with them, right? Assuming that it's within the confines of whatever, leash Disney has on him or whatever with his other stuff that he's doing. But
Yeah.
I doubt that they would have an anti-StarCraft clause for him. Right, like the opportunity to go for some really big PR thing, do something with him to be like, hey, we're bringing support to StarCraft. We love that this game. Microsoft owns one of the cornerstones of the esports industry, and Activision. Every time I would try to have this conversation with anybody at Blizzard or Activision, it would always be like, well, it doesn't make us money to acknowledge the fact that we own the corner, like the beginning of esports to a degree. Obviously they don't have Counter-Strike, but
Oh,
Oh my
like
God.
there is value in respecting your own history. If you're a
Right.
fan of anybody here who watches sports or is a fan of anything, if you're a fan of anything for that you're not just like maybe brand new on, then you probably remember what made you originally become a fan of that, right? What got people into gaming? What got people into esports? Who has been pioneering the competitive gaming space for a long time? And StarCraft is there. And Microsoft has an opportunity to take that legacy and put it on a pedestal and say, hey, we respect what has brought us to where we are today. And even if it's not the most popular game in the world, which they don't need to say that,
Yeah.
everybody, it's a niche title. Everyone knows that, but it has a dedicated hardcore fan base. And just doing right by that is huge PR overall. Because you don't need to play StarCraft to be like, They're just cool. Like they did some sort of celebration for for the history of esports, and they tied in this old game with some celeb, and they're like, hey, we're gonna release some stuff for it so that the people that have been a part of it, know that we're behind them, and we hope to see the industry continue to grow. Like there's just so many great opportunities outside of whatever we want to make money off the game to just make themselves look really good just by caring at all.
Right.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
there's value too in establishing brand loyalty. If they do good stuff for the communities that they just bought, then that's going to make them more likely to get that game pass. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
So, Brown Bear, I cut you off with because I was very curious about the devs that they sent for the security thing. Where were you going with that before?
Oh
I
no,
remember.
no problem. I was just going to make a small comment that I myself and a few other people in the community use the BattleNet API to get data about the number of
Yeah.
active players and the ladder
Sick.
and so forth. And that's like a pretty straightforward, thing to set up from a software engineering perspective in this year 2022. And somehow Blizzard manages to not do that successfully. And I would love for any engineer at Microsoft, they could just pick someone, almost at random to just
Yeah,
come
yeah.
and set that up in a way where it's highly available and works correctly. I think that would be great.
So do you what is available to the API? I'm very curious about this now. Like from the BattleNet client itself, what can you draw from from the active player base? Because I know you can draw for your own personal games as you're playing from the StarCraft API, but I didn't know what you could get from the BattleNet API.
You can retrieve all of the active ladders, all of who's playing, what their BattleNet ID is, what their rank is, the wins and losses. You can break it down by region. So all of those websites like Ranked for the Win and I believe
Yeah,
SCT
yeah.
Nexus is a new one. They rely on this API to populate their data sets.
Yeah, I saw from SC2 Pulse, was it, that the number of concurrent games is not dropped since 2017 pretty much? Like people are still playing the game the same amount that they were kind of before. I can't remember who I saw retweet that post, but yeah, it's like so I was wondering where they're getting that data from. I didn't know where they were scraping it from. Maybe it was from the website, but definitely I didn't know you could get it straight from the BattleNet client API, right? I'd imagine. Or would it be from their web server or
Yeah, they have an API that supports retrieving metadata about all of their games.
Oh, okay. Cool. That's really cool. So, kind of one of the only things we haven't really touched on, I guess, is that now with all these RTS and in this acquisition, Microsoft also acquires MLG, right? Because MLG is owned by ActiBliz. Do you guys think that now that they have so many competitive titles that they'll try their hand on esports? Because they have funded tournaments in the past for AoE 4 and AoE 2, I think, as well. Or maybe just AoE 2. But do you think that they go further and try and use MLG to sort of, continue doing stuff with that? Or do you think that they just let that rest and let the grassroots continue?
My observation from seeing what they've done with Age of Empires is they funded tournaments for both Age of Empires 2 and Age of Empires 4. They
Yeah.
seem to put up enough money such that it's an effective marketing exercise, but not enough money to allow people to be professional players.
Right.
Just enough money so people can stream professionally, and but not just play. There's no equivalent of Maru in the Age of Empires community of someone who just plays and doesn't have a public persona. You can't really make a living doing that, at least right now, the way the money is distributed.
So you don't think that the MLG acquisition changes anything? That maybe that was a way to sort of bridge that gap?
I always, to be honest, I'm a little bit ignorant here. I knew that Blizzard owned the MLG brand, but I don't know what sort of talent, what sort of people they actually have underneath that umbrella, what they do.
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, a decent amount of the folks behind that have started a different company because Activision was very
Did they give up on it?
well, they bought them because they wanted to own Call of Duty, right? That was the whole
Right.
big thing. They don't want to have to compete against them. They don't want to have to get into licensing drama with them because if the reason why MLG died is because Activision said "F you, we want to do our own thing," then the entire scene, which was on the side of MLG and all of that, and supported by them for many years, You don't want to do everything to turn them against you. So buying them was one part of it. But I think those guys are running Esports Engine now, which I do not believe is. I don't think that that's connected. But I think
okay.
that I think as far as leadership goes, guys like Adam Apicella are over there now. So you don't have the same people that are necessarily going to be on top of that division. And I think that
So there's
they've
a pretty
been
hollow
working.
acquisition there. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as far as the production goes, they do communicate about that stuff. They may be working with them. They may have been working with them as a third party, so they may have contracts with them. They may end up working with them to do live events if that's something that they want to do. I follow Adam Apicella on Twitter, and I like see some of the things they talk about. You know, like when this merger got announced, they're like, people are talking about if an MLG could come back, because part of the issue with Activision and Bobby Kotick at the helm of that company is they want everything to be completely theirs, so that they're like, we own it, it's ours. It's not MLG, it's CDL. It has to be Call of Duty League by Activision Blizzard. It's not StarCraft 2. Like they had to make WCS. Everything had to fall under this umbrella. DreamHack was running the tournaments and doing like 90% of the legwork. Blizzard just paid them to call it WCS instead of DreamHack. And they would always be like, please don't refer to this event as DreamHack Yeonshiping. Please refer to this event as WCS Fall or WCS Winter. They're very specific about having brand control over this. And I think that if under Microsoft's umbrella, I don't think that they need to have that. And I think some of that goodwill could come back by opening it up to a more neutral brand like MLG. So I don't see that being off the table. I think it would be smarter for them to bring MLG back with a huge prize pool and be like, MLG's back, and just give everybody that kind of sense of hope that this is something more like what we had before than this overly corporate thing that they've been doing the last few years. But yeah, obviously they don't have to do that, but I think it would make a lot of sense for them to.
What is the return on the investment for a company like that investing into esports? Are they hoping for more players to pick up the game by visibility being increased, or what?
Yeah, it's an advertising mechanism, no?
Yeah. Most of that money gets burned. As far as I'm aware, making money off of it is like, you know, it's like League of Legends with LCS. You know, the game, it's a free to play game that sells skins and they have event passes, but you don't pay to watch the broadcast. They might still have premium tickets for that, but they dump millions of dollars into it because it keeps the player base engaged, and they find ways to tie it into what they're doing with the game. So I don't think that any other company couldn't go with that strategy, because that's basically what StarCraft's been. You know, the money, like, why do DreamHack and ESL do it? Like, are they making a bunch of money by broadcasting these games? No. The sponsors help them recoup some of the costs, but it's cash on top of everything else that they're getting from Blizzard to do it. You know, they're not actually like just straight up making money. Otherwise, they would be doing a bunch of stuff on their own all the time.
I have actually kind of a technical question about the business, how the business works. So like all of the talent that's required to put these offline events together, like whether it's the camera people or like just all of the people that are required, do they work for like specific companies where they only do DreamHack, or are they just like freelance contractors who can sort of work for anybody? Like you can comment any event, right? Like you don't have to just comment DreamHack.
Well, some people, I believe, work full time with the companies. I know that when we did stuff like in Burbank and Los Angeles, they have to hire like union people to do shows in certain parts of the world, right? So like a cameraman that comes in might be someone that's like, oh yeah, I get contracted by Blizzard or by ESL to come in and do this. When we do the European events, I usually see more of the same people every event. It's a little bit less variance. So I think that they hire a lot of those people full time, but I don't know too many intricate details of that. Commentators do not usually work full time anymore. There was a period in like 2014 to like 2016 where ESL hired a bunch of people to be full time commentators, like Apollo and Caleres and them and Todd. Those guys were there, but yeah, for the most part, I don't think that many companies do that anymore. Maybe Riot still does, but I think they might have even moved towards doing contract work, because it just doesn't really make sense to do full-time employment, because anti-compete laws get really weird when you can commentate, one title and then another. But like California has a lot of worker protections for things like that make it awkward to say, oh, you can do our game, but nobody else's. So I think from what I've seen anyway, most stuff ends up being freelance because of that these days.
Interesting. So Blizzard's, or I guess Microsoft, isn't really locked out of using the MLG brand, and they can still just hire all the people from the
Yeah.
market.
Yeah, and I think that's the best part about owning that infrastructure is that they already have a team of people there who can do that work, and they just have to say, we will give you the money to make this happen. Here is your budget. Go do what you normally do and put on a great event.
And do you think, what do you think is going to happen with BlizzCon then? If they, now that they have all this infrastructure, do we foresee that still happening? Do you think it'll be like MicroCon or something? Like, what do you guys think is that event's going to turn into?
That's a really good question because
Mhm.
I could see it going complete. I could see them trying to keep up appearances, but I don't really know why. If they were going to do BlizzCon, why not just do it bigger and incorporate something else? Isn't that the point of acquiring this brand? But because that is a really interesting question since the quality of BlizzCons also degraded very quickly over the last few years. Well, when they were happening anyway.
Yeah, I wonder if they're
Right.
gonna have like companies, like you're saying, like now we have these like third party esports companies. I wonder if they're gonna have them come in and be like you're saying, like, we have this money, we want you to put on this event, go do it.
Yeah.
And hopefully they can do it. Hopefully you have these like veterans from like BlizzCon being like, we can carry the torch. Hopefully that's kind of like the hope, right?
For events like BlizzCon, that is what they do, by the way. So like when
Yeah.
we do BlizzCon and we have the big stage, it's a bunch of people from ESL that are still running the 99% of the show, and then any specific components that are owned by or like Blizzard assets. Like when we had the big light up screen, they have their own team of people who manage that. Like when we had that crazy stage, but yeah, so they don't. Those companies generally don't have their own teams of actual people who can go and execute that. I think they tried to do that with Overwatch League, and that ended up being a big part of them bleeding out crazy costs and downscaling. So that didn't really seem to be the move for them. But I think they still have some people on contract for that. I don't know how many.
Gotcha.
If they did another BlizzCon, they would need another big round of content, right? Because that's one of the main things is we're announcing this stuff.
They'd
this year.
probably have to have a game to release. Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a long time.
Well,
since
they
Blizzard released the original
D4,
game.
and they've got like some new survival game they were talking about, like, and then Overwatch 2. So they got a couple. They got 3. Right?
Overwatch 2. I wish there was a website I could go put like $5 on whether or not that game is actually ever going to be released, or if Microsoft will bring divine justice and say, just this release, just patch all that shit into regular Overwatch. No, we're gonna actually just, if you want to save this brand, just go back to working on the game and stop trying to do this. Let's sell another box and trick our investors in Overwatch League that there's going to be a resurgence of players, because it's not happening. No matter, they could try to pretend that Overwatch 2 is going to save all the stuff, the money and stuff they've already lost on it, but that's just not reality. Making the fan base and the player base of that game happy should be their number one priority, because they have
Right.
colossally failed at that for the last few years.
Damn.
Yeah. And like, I guess with all this said, like, how do we feel about the future of StarCraft 2 right now? With under being the Microsoft umbrella, are we feeling good about it? Are we feeling hopeful?
This
Are-
shit is
are
a
we-
classic, man.
Yeah.
StarCraft 1 is the classic. People are still playing that shit. And
Yeah.
it's super old.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
I log into StarCraft 2 and I'm ready to go. I'm having a good time because it's so
Imagine this.
polished.
Imagine this. StarCraft, Brood War, 25, 30, whatever year anniversary we're headed towards. Log in and play a game and get a pylon skin or some shit in Minecraft, or a gym rain or whatever. It doesn't have to be something crazy. but having that the opportunity to we're going to do a really big thing for this game for this event, and we're going to reward you across our Game Pass suite for playing this game during this event, so that even if you don't care, because most people don't outside of when it's in the media, it'll still incentivize like an injection of players that maybe end up staying, maybe they don't, but for a brief time, you're doing justice to the fan base and the community. Those are the opportunities I think they need to capitalize on.
What about you, Brown Bear? How you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely I agree very much with Nero when he says that both StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2 are polished games. They work well. I think commercially they've been very successful. Critically, they've been very successful. I think they're both designed. I think StarCraft 2 is designed very well. I think one of the reasons that I like the Game Pass business model is because it's largely a hands-off business model in which Microsoft just kind of lets StarCraft 2 develop on its own and provides it with funding and kind of lets things go as they go. My fear always is that, Microsoft decides to take a heavy hand and says, oh, like let's add a bunch of features and stuff. And I think StarCraft 2 is so good that if they were to make major changes to it, it's not clear to me that they would necessarily be positive just
Right.
because of how good the game currently is. And so, I think the Game Pass model is what I hope they're going for, and just letting, whoever wants to work on the game to take it in a good direction.
So kind of building off of that, I guess we're gonna kind of head into the ESL portion of stuff, but before, I guess, I want to go with final predictions here. So there's three. I break down where your predictions would lie into three phases. There's predictions pre-merger, right? Because 2023 June is the merger, so there's clearly a massive difference between Blizzard pre-merger and post-merger. So you're gonna have predictions pre-merger, predictions short-term after merger, and then long-term StarCraft predictions. So like StarCraft in general, not just like StarCraft 2, but what they might do with like the IP. But that's probably going to be mostly long-term. I think mostly adjustments to StarCraft 2 in the pre-merger and short-term. What do you guys think is going to happen? We'll start with Neuro, maybe.
So short term, you're talking about when they actually have control of stuff, which is 2023.
So before that, so like there's a gap before, and then there's after the merger, and then there's long-term.
Before, I
Right.
think nothing will happen. I think it'll be just the same as what we've been doing, where maybe we get a map cycle, maybe we don't. No patches. Whenever they do have control, I don't know. My question has always been, if they were to do a balance patch of some kind, who would make that decision? Because the game it's not perfectly balanced, but it's pretty good. Like the matchups feel pretty good with a few exceptions. But who would go into the office and make that decision, and the pros would be happy with that? That would be
Right.
my big question mark. Like I'm kind of fine with where it is right now, so if they don't patch it, I won't be super mad. Longer term, I could see maybe them trying to find a way to incentivize people to come back. Like Blizzard has done certain promotional events like that, where if you log in during this period of time, you get a free skin. I could see
Yeah.
some kind of incentive like that being created, where they just want to get people to sample the different Blizzard products, because they have two different things they want to have happen. They want to have the Blizzard people test out the Microsoft stuff, and they want to have the Microsoft people say, oh, hey, well, now this is more accessible for me, maybe through Game Pass, so I can go visit this and I get some free stuff if I log in. I guess that would be my main prediction, is they can keep the game alive, they can incentivize people to visit it, and they could tweak some things here and there, but they would need to build a proper team, or at least contract some good people if they were to make a balance patch.
And Brown Bear.
So I think in the short term, before the acquisition is closed, I think I agree with Neuro. Not too much is going to happen. Maybe some updated maps and stuff. I think one thing that really interests me is whether Microsoft will continue funding StarCraft 2 esports at a level where you can have true professional gamers who don't maintain a public persona and just survive based on their membership in professional teams and from winning money. So I'm curious what decision they make there. My hope is that they continue it and they don't go down the Age of Empires path of just having these small marketing tournaments that you can't really make a living off of, and you basically have to be a streamer. I hope they don't go down that road. I hope they kind of renew ESL's contract. I think in the long term they'll probably take advantage of. I would hope to see them take advantage of the StarCraft intellectual property to make more games in the StarCraft universe. I don't know if that will necessarily be StarCraft 3. I don't know if it'll be like resurrecting StarCraft Ghost or like doing something else. I think as Nura pointed out earlier, the StarCraft lore is extremely good. The campaigns are really fun. I think there's a lot that they could do there, and I think they could take that lore, which is like just a ton of like existing value, and port it into a genre that maybe has more appeal or is more popular than real-time strategy. I think that that's possible. That would be my overall prediction of what they would do with the franchise. But I think StarCraft 2 overall will be in a good state. I don't know if we'll ever get StarCraft 3 or even more content for StarCraft 2, but I think they'll provide enough money in the long term such that it will be kind of maintained better than the way it is today.
Mr. Nate.
There is a possibility too that I don't know what the level of documentation that's left is, but obviously this conversation kind of comes up when we talk about whether things can be changed or if new people can even update the game. But StarCraft 2 came out in 2010. Surprise, they had a couple of big changes in terms of what they were going to do with the release model. It was originally going to be one big game. I don't know if you guys remember
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
After the Activision Blizzard merger, it magically became 3 games.
3.
But the first development demos that we saw from a very different version were starting to come out in 2008, 2009, right? A year or two or so ish before the game released. Development on that engine and on that game had to have started at least a few years before that for it to have been at that level of polish that we originally saw. So we're coming up on
06, 07,
a
right?
potentially, yeah. So what I'm getting at is, the engine's potentially like, yeah, is the game 12 years old? Oh, the engine might be like 17 years old from when it was first done. And I know that the last few years that they had a development team for StarCraft, most of the work they were doing was cleaning up code debt so that it would be compatible with the Alpha Star stuff that they were trying to do. So there might be some stuff that's better documented now, depending on what the cleanup team was able to fix. And maybe there's a possibility that it would be easier to change some things now because of that. Like we hardly got anything in like 2018, 2019 patch or content wise, because that's all they were doing was just converting everything from being half Flash to C++ or whatever it is that it runs on now. And there were like some performance improvements from it, but nothing really changed for the players. So could they bring in a team of people if they have enough documentation that new people could learn how to add and change some stuff? Probably, but I think most people probably agree. Outside of like portraits or maybe new skins, like we're not really asking for much more than the season to roll when it says it's gonna roll, for the maps to work, for the map pool to be the map pool that they announced it. The bar is so low. We just want the patch notes to actually have what they say are in them, no matter how small they are. So I don't think it would be difficult for them to get a dub doing that. And I don't see any reason why they don't start conversations about progressing to a StarCraft 3 or some major spinoff that they would try to do within the first year of the merger being complete. So we could hear something about it as early as 2024. Maybe 2025 makes more sense, but it takes time. It all takes time.
So Nish, what do you think?
So let's see, for the short term, what I'm picturing is them getting a dev team and them finally announcing a patch, probably, right? Get everybody excited, renew that interest. Yay, Microsoft's like the big hero that we all needed. Midterm, finally start developing a little bit more, probably offering a bit more skins for SC2, and maybe even seeing like more esports events, right? So then it kind of like brings everybody together, and it's feeling like our hopium is being fulfilled. Like these are the people we needed. And then like in the long term, maybe some teaser about SC3 or maybe StarCraft Ghost or something like that, or maybe expanding just the StarCraft lore, man. Because dude, when it comes to StarCraft lore, I love diving into that stuff, and even that's just enough for me. But in the long term, like probably 5-6 years from now, hopefully something in terms of SC3.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah. So okay. So you got anything else?
oh no.
Okay.
I was just gonna close out with like that. That's my hope.
Yeah. So in the short term, I think that we're gonna get maps for sure, right? Like, and hopefully they're the Team Liquid maps that get played most recently, so that they actually make sense in the meta, and not like 1.5-year-old Team Liquid contest maps. Like the last one, I think was like 2 seasons behind. I'm not 100%. I don't know if they came from they might even like a mixed bag. I can't quite remember. So I think we're definitely like my copium says that we're gonna get the maps, but my hopium says I think we're gonna get a patch. I don't know where. Like I have suspicions about where the the balance might come from specifically, but I think that there's definitely gonna be like maybe some renewed interest because of the merger just happening in general. And my hopium says that it's the easiest, right? Like whenever you're doing this kind of stuff, I think it always makes sense to do the lowest effort things that give the biggest impact, right? You don't want to do some like really niche, tedious thing that nobody really cares about. You want to do something that is quite easily done. You don't have to really learn any engines too much. You just need to kind of, sort of follow the protocol and just, do a patch. So I think balance patch is possible in the short term pre-merger. I think it's almost certain post-merger. If it goes anything like AoE 2 has, like, then I think balance patch post-merger is like, I would imagine that's actually copium. Like, that's copium levels. I don't have to hope very hard to imagine that world. And now, beyond that, maybe skins. Co-op commander would be nice, like, but that's probably in the slightly longer term post-merger as well. Just things that can easily be added that add content that people might do Game Pass for, I think, is in the medium term. And like long term, you've got StarCraft 3. I don't know about a revival of Ghosts, like maybe in concept, but like it just seems like a third person shooter in 2022 plus is like kind of, I don't know, like is that really going to be what they do? I'm not convinced that that's the case. But
I don't know.
StarCraft 2.
I mean, because like a lot of the games that, well, this is just me too. Like a lot of the like major titles that were coming out in the last few years were like FPSs or like Apex is a good example. Like I remember when that first came out, everybody was
Yeah.
really excited. With Doom and all that, and then you're saying StarCraft Ghosts is like this third person shooter.
It was third person shooter.
Yeah, so I feel like they would be more willingly to go that route. And
Yeah,
like,
maybe,
hey,
but I think they'd start ground up, right? I don't think they'd like flesh out the old concept that existed.
yeah, because in the early years of StarCraft Ghosts, it was just passed on to like different companies. So I mean, at this point, you wouldn't want to take that game on with whatever's existing. It's just like you want to take
Right.
the story idea and then just give it to a company that will execute so good on it. So,
Right.
all right. But yeah, and then with that, like you mentioned the whole like Game Pass thing. Do you think like it'd be a good thing for like a good thing for us to see StarCraft on Game Pass? Do you see like any negative I guess side effects to it that can possibly happen?
I think of it this way. You probably, the way it ends up being is that you'd probably leave the game free to play as it is. I don't think you try to turn something like that around. But imagine that if let's assume that you're somebody who is a free to play user who hasn't spent any money on the game. You played your 10 placement matches so you could play ranked, and you just do that. What would you get from Game Pass if you hadn't paid for anything? All the skins in the game? Probably not. Some skins, probably that makes sense. There would be some you want to try and hit a little bit of everything. But you could turn it into a value add for players by making it so like if you have this pass, you could just use whatever co-op commander. You don't have to buy the individual ones. You could if you want, but you could just, if you haven't tried co-op, you could play all of them. No more level limit crap, whatever. That can just be included, right? Or for a new player, it's like, well, if you sign up with Game Pass, then you can just play ranked immediately and you'll have this, these skins, right, included, sort of thing. Or you could throw the campaigns in there because I think it's just Wings of Liberty and Heart of the Swarm, right, or half of Heart of the Swarm that's free at the moment. So you could potentially be like, everything that you would have had to pay for when it was free is included for $10 a month, right? I think that's the angle that they probably try to take. And maybe I know that from speaking to the developers, at least from their part, it's trivial for them to add stuff like new portraits. Like they've almost got like a little tool set up where they just click on an image, pick the name for it, and it goes in the database and it's like in the game. So it's one of the least difficult things for them to do. So could they throw something like that in there, add a new anniversary portrait or a celebration of StarCraft event that they just do just to do a solid, do right by the players? Yeah, I think that's completely on the table.
The campaigns through Game Pass, I think, would be really smart, even if it's
Yeah.
only a limited time thing, because the content of the campaigns is really solid stuff. And the Game Pass having some aspect of that, I think, would give people a good deal, because that's a big part of why people got the Game Pass for Age of Empires, right? Is it was super cheap if you get the Game Pass. So if they do a similar thing where I would like to play the StarCraft campaigns, I've heard it's cool, but the dollar amount for each of those,
But
maybe
now
not.
it's included. But now you already have it, Neuro, because you play Minecraft or you play World of Warcraft. Now you can play all the StarCraft campaigns for free. Now everything in it is free because you already are paying for something else, and that's where the players come in. That's where the money comes in.
What about you, Brown Bear?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with both Nate and Neuro. I think making the campaigns free would be a good call. It would be nice. So I switched phones recently, and then I had to reinstall my BattleNet Authenticator on my new phone because I forgot to do that. It'd be nice if I could log in with my Microsoft account. But I think maybe some people would be opposed to that, so I don't know if they would do that. But it'd be nice if those accounts could be linked somehow. Maybe that's not really related to Game Pass. It's just an infrastructure thing.
If you played Minecraft, eventually it'll take a long time, but eventually those accounts are going to get converted to Microsoft accounts. Don't you worry. Don't you worry.
Actually,
It'll be
I
an
have
early
a
adopter tool as well, where you can have it. You can have all of it transferred to your new account without losing your old one until they delete them too.
I have a question for you guys then. So on the topic of BattleNet, do you think they roll BattleNet into the Microsoft Store or vice versa? Like which way do you think they go?
It'll be a slow process. It'll be a slow
Or do you think
process.
they keep them both?
Part of the edge of their Game Pass formula is that a lot of their games now, they're releasing all their AAA games, and they pledge to do this, by the way. It's a thing now that Microsoft does. Their big Xbox releases are simultaneously being released on PC. And for the majority of them, if you buy them on the Windows Store or on Xbox Live, you can play a version of it for your PC using the same account if you want to. So if you had like Gears, for example, if you buy Gears 5, you could play Gears 5 on your Xbox, you could play Gears 5 on Windows PC if you owned it. So that sort of dual entitlement thing is something that they've been doing a lot. That was a big part of their pledge, that if you own it, you own it. You can play it on your Xbox, you can play it on your PC. Since it's tied to your account, you can't log into both at the same time because they know, right? That's their anti-cheating the system sort of deal. So I can see them being like, yeah, well, you can buy games on BattleNet still, or you can get Game Pass and you can just download StarCraft through the Windows Store instead. I think that's how they get people to slowly move over, because that's how I would see it anyway. I don't really know, of course.
Just roll it into a random Windows update. Wait,
You
what?
just do it slowly. You just do it real slowly. At one point, you still had your Mojang account, and then one day they said, "Hey, in a year we're going to make you sign in with a Microsoft account. You have a whole year to click this link that will connect your two accounts, and all your licenses will be synced. We're going to give you as much time as possible. We won't break your old game, but you just won't be able to get new updates or whatever through the launcher until you shift your account over. And it's probably going to happen like that over a period of, I'd guess, like 4 or 5 years, considering the scale.
I think from an infrastructure perspective, it makes sense to use the Microsoft Store and just make that better to distribute games rather than trying to maintain both BattleNet and the Microsoft Store simultaneously.
But they know people will be pissed if they were just immediately like, nope, all your BattleNet stuff's gone. A good example of this is Destiny 2, right? When Bungie broke off from Activision, they were still on BattleNet, but they released the game on Steam, and they were like, we have a program. You could keep playing your BattleNet version. That's fine, because our contract, we have to be able to update that. But you can connect your account to your Steam account, and it'll be on your Steam account for free. And you can still have it on your BattleNet account or whatever, but we'll transfer all your stuff over, and you can just move to this other platform, and you won't have to worry. You won't have to use that anymore. So over time, that's how I see it end up. They might never get rid of BattleNet, but eventually, if you want whatever the latest, newest stuff that they have is going to be, you're going to need to log in with a Microsoft account, which they'll either let you do in-game, or more likely will be based on the platform that you're running it from.
And like with that said, do you think we'll see like any like we tapped on skins earlier? Do you think we'll see any other skins from like other IPs make it into it? I know Blizzard hasn't had a track record of doing that, but do you think there's a possibility now?
Master Chief.
I think
Let's go,
Con-
Master
con-
Chief Marines.
Yeah.
considering the metaverse hype and all that right now,
Yeah.
it's like it's an obvious dub to try and do something. They own a lot of good space Marines versus aliens brands, Halo, Gears of War. You know, if I could have a COG Gear Marine skin, it wouldn't look out of place and it would be badass. It's not the kind of thing Blizzard would ever do, but they're not going to be Blizzard anymore once all of this is over. So
Yeah.
I think anything's on the table.
Yeah. The realm of possibilities open now. That's awesome, man. Yeah. And then so after all of this happened, you know, they announced their new what was it? Unannounced survival game. How did you guys all feel about that? I felt like it was just kind of like, oh, by the way, we're also making this other thing that's like we're just completely focusing on forgetting about all our other games. That's how it felt to me. How did you guys
It's like
feel
a
about that?
vaporware announcement, right? They gave you absolutely nothing and probably showed another piece of Titan concept art.
Yeah, because it was just like you have
Oh.
Diablo 4 that everybody was looking forward to. You had Overwatch 2 that everybody's looking forward to, and then they announced this other thing. It's like, dude,
I think
get me those games first.
the earliest we'll hear about that new project or see gameplay or fake gameplay of it will probably be like end of next year earliest. I would be shocked if they were a year deep into the dev process for that.
Yeah,
That seemed like somebody up top said we need to say we're making something right now. And let's give zero information at all.
yeah, we're still progressing.
From their website too, it also kind of seems like a hiring roll call. Like it's basically like a small blurb about Blizzard as a company and like the fact that you need storytellers. But then you get to the bottom and it's just like a ton of positions that they need to fill in. Like,
Well,
right?
yeah.
It sort of feels like they're like, so we had this sick idea, but like we need some
So all
people.
turns out all our lead engineers and writers and all that, we like told them we couldn't give them extra stock payouts because of COVID and they all left the company. So would you like to come and work 48 hours a day and make this game happen, please?
Yeah, that's
We'll
actually,
we'll give you a sword if you put up with it for 5 years.
it's actually a really, really good point, actually, that the announcement gives people maybe more confidence in working for Blizzard. So maybe it's like the perfect time to try to get people to apply and hire them.
If you don't want to
Yeah.
work on Diablo 4, it's like, what are they doing? What are you, if you're like, oh, I want to make games, I'm going to go to Blizzard. It's like, well, you can work on a remaster. you're not going to have creative input on a new project, or you could do Overwatch 2, which, God knows what that, I still don't think even they know what it actually is, or
Mhm.
Diablo 4, which is the only thing that seems to actually have something going on there that isn't a mess.
Yeah,
And even
Yeah,
that
and
got
they'll-
delayed, right? They still, I think, yeah. So
yeah. I mean, like even them just saying like, oh, this unannounced survival game, and then looking at the concept art, I was just like, oh, this kind of looks similar to Valheim. You know, like you're playing this one character.
kind of looks
survival.
similar to every game where you naked and punch trees that's been released in the last 5 years. Boy, oh boy. I really hope they just get the dong physics correct, because
Yeah.
that was really what was the deal breaker for all the other ones for me personally. If I can't
Oh,
get
man.
banned, if I can't get banned for streaming this game, am I really living?
I guess are we excited about this game then?
I don't know enough about it to be excited.
Nobody knows anything. It could literally be anything. It could
Its name is
literally be anything.
Unannounced survival game.
There you
Like,
go.
It's a piece of
It's not
concept
even
art.
announced.
It's a piece of concept art. There's concept art of so many things that just do not ever make it into final games, right? Like the concept art for Overwatch was the MMO stuff. There was all this other stuff. Like it doesn't mean anything to have a one artist's drawing where they're like, this looks different enough from all of our other stuff. Ship it. Like, no, they haven't given us anything.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing, like I said, the only thing I can see that is, or the only thing I can see is just like something similar to Valheim, or like them trying to resurrect like some sort of like Fable type game. But yeah, I wasn't really too excited about this one. And
A new story
yeah.
game from Blizzard would be awesome. I don't know about you guys, but I always thought the story aspect of Blizzard games was one of the draws. I liked playing Diablo because what other game could I go kill a bunch of monsters and then read a tome about some chick who murders a bunch of virgins and bathes in their blood to sustain her power? Like, like you got some metal shit there.
Yeah.
But then everything kind of went cookie cutter and came about money. So let's hope that whatever it is, they're focused more on telling a good story again than putting in microtransactions.
Yeah, doing things right this time. Sal, you want to set us up for this next topic?
Well, yeah. So I don't really know a lot about the ESL merger, right? Because that's where we're going next. Is the ESL merger? So ESL's bought by Savvy Gaming Group for $1 billion, which is a lot. I don't know a lot about what that means for ESL as a company. I do know, at least I'm pretty certain that the Savvy Gaming Group is literally the Saudi Arabian government. I don't know what any of that means. Like I have my like tinfoil hat thoughts, but like aside from that, I don't really know. I'd imagine that Nate is probably who to throw to for this because you would have more insight than I think I would about what this means. Like not just from a meme perspective, because there have been a lot of memes about this, but like from where does StarCraft 2 kind of what happens to StarCraft 2 and all of the IPs that the ESL actually like kind of broadcasts for.
Yeah. Well, obviously this is a whole huge thing with and like everybody in the entire industry has given their hot or cold takes on it.
Yeah.
We had, I think the day that they announced it, they had a call with us. We got to talk with like Apollo and some other people from ESL that wanted to give us a floor to ask any questions that we had about what this meant or what it was. To the best of my knowledge, based on what I was told, the impression they at least wanted us to have is that they retain full autonomy of everything they're doing. These guys just want a cut of whatever ESL is basically getting into. They from the way that it's been presented to me, they are interested in where the space is going. They think that by investing, they're going to make a lot of money by owning these companies and owning these IPs. But there wasn't any conversation about like nobody's been put in charge that's like on top of them that's telling them what to do. I have no reason to believe that that's 100% true. I obviously cannot confirm that.
Right.
But yeah, the way that it was told to us was that they're still going to be able to do what they want to do. The money that's coming in is so that they don't have to cut budgets on big projects that they want to do that wouldn't normally be able to get funded without like dev money or something. So the scale of some events in the future might change. We were told it doesn't really affect how things are going to move around or be changed throughout like the events that are already scheduled. So I don't really know too much beyond that because all of that is obviously very like everything is totally fine sort of thing. They told us that they're okay with us talking about it. They asked us to obviously be respectful in the discourse. For myself personally, as somebody who works with them and for them, I don't come from money. My family's broke. I'm the guy that's trying to do stuff. I'm paying them. So I have no interest in getting into any kind of rant or anything like that because I am very financially dependent on my commentary work. So
Right.
I'm not going to go beyond what I've been told in that realm, whether they're owned by the Saudi government or not, or whether it's like a real actual group of people that have agenda separate from them. I have no idea, but all it seems like is they're going to probably be doing more stuff in the immediate future, but we didn't get told what that was either, obviously.
Rumor has it
Right.
in the Counter-Strike scene that this was more a move for that than anything ever related to StarCraft.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure there's no interest in our space outs unless it boils down to like a Jyn Air CEO situation, right? Where it's like somebody is personally invested that happens to be a part of one of these big groups.
Yeah, because that day when they announced it, we just heard about this Savvy Gaming Group all of a sudden. So I was just like, okay, this is probably like some sort of
Yeah.
branding thing that's
A
going on.
lot of people heard
obviously.
about them for the first time that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, surprise, man. And yeah, looking at like who owns it. I can't remember the name of the company, but they have a lot of hands of different things, different investments, and I feel like this is one of them. And for the most part, from what I hear, is just like they're just very hands off, and they just try to maintain things that the way they are. So I think one of the things that we were all worried about was is StarCraft 2 going away at these events? Like, it's just it's a big shakeup, and with change, especially from a different group, we kind of worried about those things. Do we still see SC2 at these events still? Like, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I don't think that changes. Just despite everything, you can have conversations about demographics, what people are interested in. There are a lot of people, the people who run stuff, the people who make this stuff that all the kids get excited about and watch are people that are our age now. There's people that are in their 30s and in their 40s, and everybody that I speak to when I talk to these companies and upper management and all that stuff, they know StarCraft. Most of them love it. Most of them are fans of it to some degree, or were at some point. So if we hear that like Apollo just doesn't work at ESL randomly in the next couple of months for some reason, which I would not expect, then I'd be like, okay, the StarCraft people are starting to move out of the company. But he is someone that is in a very big position of power, right? We know people, him, Carmack. There's a lot of love and respect for StarCraft. It is also one of the easiest games logistically to organize events for and set up. You can have the top 32 players at an event for a very small fraction of the cost to have. I don't think it's even feasible to have the top 32 Counter-Strike teams anywhere, if there even are that many, right? There's a lot of logistical reasons why StarCraft is a great add-on to any of their big premier events, because they can do it very well and make it look good without having to spend anywhere near as much as they do on other titles. It's also worth bringing up as well, prize pools don't have to be as big, because one guy winning $100,000 is fine. If 5 dudes win $100,000, a little bit less of an impact there.
Right.
And Neuro, Brown Bear, do you guys have any thoughts on this?
I had read a little bit around this situation and how a lot of like Saudi companies and so on like to invest in sports in general. So this seems like a way to diversify that with an emerging market of let's just get a hand in esports, because it seems like it's something that's going to continue to grow, which most of us, I think, would agree that it will. Like, as gaming continues to propagate around the world, more people are gaming than there were 20 years ago. That trend should continue. So if they get their foot in the door and they have ESL and they can kind of push that, it seems like a fairly reasonable choice for them to make, politics aside.
Yeah. There are a lot of factors as well, with emerging technologies and Web3 stuff, whether it ends up being real, whether it ends up mostly being grifters, there are still people who see opportunity in that. And that's another reason to invest in the space, because it seems like gaming and esports is going to be connected to it in some way, whether it's for better or worse. There are a lot of people who see this as their potential ticket to the moon, as it were.
Yeah, very true. Brown Bear, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with both Nate and Neuro. I think it's just a larger company that it's Savvy Game Group's owned by or backed by the Saudi Public Investment Fund, which is a sovereign wealth fund of Saudi Arabia. It's just trying to get a cut of the earnings from foreign companies. I don't imagine it to really change anything in the day-to-day of ESL until someone, pro gamers tend to be young and they tend to be very brash, and I'm sure someone will get on stage in front of 1 million people and say something about the Saudi Arabian government, and then I think we'll find out how true their decision to stay out of things is.
It's gonna be a ban. There's gonna be a riot. There's gonna be protests. It's gonna be this whole thing all over again.
That will be an interesting bridge to cross when we get there.
Yeah. And with that said, just like we were talking about, like the Microsoft acquisition and this potential funding, do you think we'll see something similar for that from Savvy Gaming Group? That is.
My understanding, I don't really know how the finances of ESL and MTG actually work. Whether my understanding is that they are profitable as a result of gaming companies losing money by hiring them to run tournaments. That's my understanding of their business model. So I don't think that they can really actively do anything more to make money. They're just kind of waiting for gaming companies to give them money. But I'm not an expert in the business.
There's also a lot of value if you look at ESL from an outside perspective. One of the big things that everything is moving towards in the online space, data, user acquisition, having user data for advertisements to package and sell that data to other people, because that's such a huge thing. Worth keeping in mind, the ESL Gaming's website. When I read, like, I was going through like investor reports, when people like, what do people who don't understand gaming think about ESL when they look at this? And they're like, well, you have hundreds of millions of users who go through like their online gaming platforms because they're connected through like the Madden signups on the console when you play the tournaments there, right? And I think they had like a thing with Rocket League at some point, or if you're playing in their online weekly cups, you're using their website, you're signing up. They have a lot of active users. They have access to see a lot of the trends of where people are playing more, where people are playing less, because they host these online platforms for lots of games. So there are other factors that play outside of just, specifically the tournaments themselves. They gain access to a lot of users, and the ability to have shape what that ends up being is something that's worth keeping an eye on.
Nice. What do you think, Sal?
I don't know. I don't really have much to add aside from what the other guys have brought to this. To be honest, like, I don't know enough about how much it could affect. But I guess the only thing I have to add is that for people worried about SC2, like, when they're doing these live events and they rent out a stadium, I think SC2 is like pretty free, right? Like Nate kind of touched on it, that it's like clearly one of the cheapest esports to sort of set up. Like, you just need 32 PCs, and then that's it. Like, you don't need to fly in tons of teams or whatever. Like, that is basically, a couple teams right there, just so that people can play in the open bracket and whatever. And then you have the stage, but like, that space needs to be used for something. You're already renting the stadium as it is. Like, when they do DreamHack Montreal, and they rent out the stadium and they turn it around to face like the stands, pretty much. Like, they don't set anything up there. They don't even have chairs to set up. It's just part of the thing. So you kind of just, hiring a bit of talent and having these PCs there is basically like, and the cameras and stuff like that is all you kind of have to do. And then you just sort of like, it just is not that big an investment as opposed to like already renting out the stadium, right? That's the big chunk of cash that you're probably spending. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It just seems like a pretty low to the ground thing to do. So you'll probably keep having that even if the prize pools decrease. I don't think there's any worry.
That's awesome, man. Okay, so as we're getting close to the end of the show notes, I'm seeing other acquisitions. So, do any of you guys play Wordle by any chance? Because I'm seeing all this stuff on Twitter.
I don't know. I haven't checked it out. I heard someone
played
tried to make
Wordle?
an app for it, and it was like copyrighted out, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to some random website. I might have checked it out on my phone, but I don't even know like where you're supposed to do that.
You can play
Yeah,
it on your phone, just Wordle.com.
do you
Too
do you
much
play
work.
Wordle, Sad?
It's too much
Sal?
work.
Yeah, I've played it. I played it a couple days. I lost my first Wordle, and I was really sad because I missed by one letter. I was upset. I put Ender, and it was Elder, and I got kind of triggered.
So, like, seeing all the stuff on like the Twitter feeds, like I'm seeing like these like green blocks. Like, what does that mean, dude?
Oh, so the green. Okay, so okay. First of all, who else has played Wordle? Brown Bear, you played Wordle?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you played all the Wordles since you started found out about it, or are you like a very infrequent Wordler?
I've only played like 15 times.
Only. What about you, Neuro?
I have not played, but there was so much Wordle in my WoW's Discord that people were getting frustrated and they wanted a separate channel. So
Right. Okay.
It's destroying lives.
So the rule.
why is our
Wordle-
general chat all Wordle?
Wordle is a very interesting game because it's kind of capitalizing on delayed gratification mixed with like a decent word puzzle game. So like you can only play once per day because there's only one word per day. Like, you can't just spam Wordle games. So no one can get kind of bored in like the same way that you would just be able to like spam Wordles. Like, you can't just like constantly play. I found that interesting because whoever made this like clearly made the decision that having one word a day was like the way that they were going to keep people hooked, and it's absolutely working. So when you play, you guess a random 5-letter word, and then if the letters are yellow, it means that they're in the word but in the wrong spot, and if they're green, they're the right letter and right spot. So then when you see those posts, what's happening is that you're seeing what letters specifically and what spots people. Well, you actually don't see the letter. You just see if they were right or if they kind of like as they shift the letters to try and figure it out. So usually you'll see a trend of, yellow becomes green, and then they move like they slowly get more and more green boxes. Still, people finally guess the word. But I found that the New York Times acquisition was kind of fitting, right? Because like this is sort of like modern day crossword. It's like an easy appable version of like the daily crossword or the weekly crossword or whatever it would be. You just pick one word and you play it in the morning with your coffee as you read your New York Times like articles that you have with your subscription. Like I saw that as pretty like linearly, like I could see the direct connection of like why and the New York Times would acquire them specifically.
Yeah, as somebody who hasn't even played it, that's kind of like the impression that I first got off from it. It's just like, oh, it's a new version of the crossword, that you'd find in a
Yeah.
newspaper that people would open to and then just do their thing. And yeah, I mean, it got so much attention from the New York Times that they decided to acquire it because they probably believe that, yeah, this is the next step in that direction,
Yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's like most new things. It's just a much easier, simpler version of the things that came before.
And how much was it acquired for?
Does anyone else know? I think it's a couple mil, 1.5 mil, 2 mil.
Yeah, I mean the
2.5 mil.
New York Times actually has been it's kind of similar to Microsoft in that but it's like the equivalent of like for the news industry. They've sort of been like acquiring more and more thinkers and writers and like things like Wordle to create like a very, very compelling subscription package where like the New York Times regularly publishes articles that I just find like enraging. But like I
Yeah.
would still be happy to subscribe to them because they have such a huge diversity of content. They have so many writers, so many thinkers. And like it's exactly like what Nate says. Like even if they publish something that I find just incredibly stupid, it's like it's like out of nowhere. Like they hired Jane Coaston, or like they just hire like these so many smart thinkers, and you just want to read what they say, and you don't want to miss out on that because they're publishing some other person that you think is dumb. So
Yeah.
I think purchasing Wordle makes perfect sense in that regard.
Awesome. That's awesome. And in other news for acquisitions, we're going back to the Sony Bungie thing. Like, so yeah, I guess when I first heard about it, why do you, or if anyone can guess, like, what do you think Sony reached out to Bungie right away and being like, hey, we need you guys?
I wonder if it would have been that fast. Like, are you asking if it was a reaction to the Microsoft buy?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think it was like a reaction due to that?
Based
this
on my
would, like, move
understanding
that
of how
fast?
this kind of stuff happens, it was probably in the works for a while before, but may have
Yeah.
been motivated by the end of the financial quarter or something else.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that news probably pushed whoever was like waiting for the right time to announce it to be like, let's do this on someone else's PR day so they talk about us too. Could have been as simple as that.
Yeah. And do we know what games are going to be going over with Bungie? Is it just is it only Destiny, I think?
Is that the only thing they're doing right now?
Yeah, I think so.
It's
Like
the only
Destiny
IP
2,
they
right?
have that they own anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Huh. But yeah, it's interesting. A lot of crazy stuff in the acquisition world. But yeah, that brings everything to a close in terms of our notes. Sal, did you want to add anything?
Not really. I think we covered everything. Like we managed to go and like if you see the show notes, like I was going through, we managed to somehow do like it's like the Bugs Bunny thing where he's trying to make his way to the bottom corner and he just sort of loops all the way around, but somehow still ends up at the right spot at the end. Yeah, I think we covered pretty much everything.
Awesome.
Good.
Yeah. Nathanias, any closing thoughts about this whole thing?
You guys are really cute. I'm happy to be here. I'm having a good time.
Aww.
It's the
You too,
season of
buddy.
buying. You want to buy some shit? Now's
Yeah.
the time. Everyone's doing it. Get it while it's hot.
Does it come in NFT
Trading my
though?
dignity and soul for one house. Thank you.
Can I get that with one NFT, please? I would really like just an NFT. Any of you guys think NFTs are a good idea?
Yeah, you know what? What is an NFT? If anybody can just summarize it, and should I invest my daughter's college fund into it?
If you want a documentary, I just watched one. It's called Line Goes Up. I'll try to find the YouTube video real quick.
I'll
But
watch that. It's on Netflix.
The
It's on
only
YouTube.
thing anybody
Okay,
needs
YouTube.
to know is that the best case scenario where it means anything, nobody actually has to interface with it. So don't worry. You won't even know that you're
You
using
won't
it if
even
it ends
miss
up
out.
working. You won't even know
Purchasing NFTs is an
because there's
extremely
no difference
speculative.
anyway.
It's an extremely speculative investment that people are telling each other it's going to have value in the future, but you have to go and look at the blockchain and notice that something is there, and you have to also agree that that has value, which
Mm.
is something that not everyone is on the same page on because most people don't even know what it is.
What the?
Yeah.
That's
Beanie Babies on the
The
blockchain,
biggest
basically,
mistake
yeah.
all of those people make is telling people to look into it. If the technology can do what they say it can, people will never have to interface with 99% of it because front ends will simply not make you go through all of that garbage.
Hmm.
Yeah, the technology is absolutely fascinating. I think it's really, really interesting as a data storage mechanism and as a kind of a cooperation mechanism. The actual application, I think, is horrendous, but I think the technology is fascinating.
There's
Yeah,
a ton of scams too. So if you're like kind of bored and you want to get scammed out of your money, there's a ton of discords where you just go to the
Yeah.
Discord. They tell you to buy some sketch coin or get some kind of crappy image that costs way too much money, and then you can be part of that community.
Yeah, I mean, but this is
You
like
can hold a bag for 4 years and hope it becomes Ethereum.
There you go.
yeah. I mean, with most new technologies though, kind of like this on the net, like it is kind of grifted into existence sort of, right? Like it kind of feels like you get everybody who sort of feels like they really are kind of disenfranchised first, and then maybe it'll turn into something like artists and musicians specifically. Like I'm not surprised that they really want NFTs to be a thing, because then when you sell a song like that you've already purchased, the artist gets some cut from that sale, and they don't have to worry about piracy or any of that shit, or like just use like, you know, if I sold a CD, like it's gone, like, and the original artist never gets their cut, like that's all gone. You don't have to worry about any of that shit. Same with art, right? It like makes sense that they would want to adopt that kind of stuff. So like I'm not surprised to see them in there. And then obviously everyone piggybacks on it and tries to get their easy cheap cut. It's very interesting to watch it all unfold as I sit here with my wallet firmly closed.
It's very hard for these things to go mainstream without using some sort of
Yeah.
popular front end, aka a centralized database, which doesn't at that point need to use anything other than its own private database anyway.
Mhm.
You could use something blockchain maybe for security purposes, but a best case scenario for this technology is that, again, you might be able to go sell your song to somebody else, but you're not gonna be clicking on wallet addresses or any of that shit. You're gonna go to music.com and you're gonna be like, I have this album, some dude's willing to buy it off of me because I don't listen to it anymore digitally. That's the only, but you don't need that to do that.
Mm.
But whatever.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's like it's like that real life Wu-Tang Clan like gold album, right? You only get one.
It's a
and
really
worth
great
so much.
opportunity
Yeah.
for grifters, used car salesmen that don't have anybody to sell cars to anymore, and people who have gullible fan bases that will just dump money into something that they can then sell and not tell anyone about and make some money off of.
Pass.
All right. What was that?
Pass.
Pass.
So, would you like to purchase this shiny brand new NFT? It's going to be worth $1 bajillion in the future.
Pass.
I've taken an 8K microscopic image of my left butt cheek. If somebody wants to pay $7 million for it, I really appreciate that. Preferably
It's just-
someone in the mob that needs to clean a lot of money. We can have this conversation. I'll kick half of it back to you in quarters after. Don't worry. Make it happen.
One big pink pixel.
Yes,
Like-
that's right. One big pink pixel, but everybody will know what it is.
Correct.
Oh, you guys are hilarious. So, as we're closing out, you know, this show's been supported by Patreon supporters, which we all thank you so much. You know, without you, you guys wouldn't have made it to, or we wouldn't have made it to number 150. So, with that said, we wanted to answer some of the Patreon questions. So, Cobra, do you have any questions for us today?
That I do. Let's start with Polly.
So, Polly's saying, I think most people are happy about Microsoft owning now Blizzard, which gives hope that something is happening with SC2. But what could be the downside of that in your mind? What you don't want to see? Like Microsoft is known for prioritizing the Xbox more than PC gaming for a long time now. SC3 only for Xbox? What do you guys think? Sal, you want to take it first, or?
Oh yeah, sure. I'll go first. The only thing I think that could happen that I really don't want to see is that they put the game behind Game Pass. Period. Like the whole thing. I could see that they add it to the store, and like in order to play it, you need to have Game Pass. That is the only thing I desperately hope doesn't happen that I think could actually happen. I think anything else that they do, right? Like anything else should be fine. But the only likely negative downside, at least in my mind, is that they're like, hey, you know what? If we can just get all these StarCraft players to buy Game Pass by literally just locking Game Pass or locking it behind Game Pass, then we should. And then they just do that. I hope that that does not happen. I have its obvious upsides with like things like cheating and shit like that, but I think it's a bad direction for a game like StarCraft, which kind of relies on its legacy as an esport that you can just pick up and play. Like the number of people I see just coming to my chat and being like, yeah, I reinstalled after 8 years, played 3 games and I'm out. But I see it like every day. So you know that they're cycling through, like you're cycling through the number of people who are like coming back all the time because just the game has a strong foundation and legacy. Like I just don't want to see it go not free to play again. That's kind of my only, like very small percentage chance of happening worry, but worry.
Gotcha.
They
Anyone
could
else
buff
wanna
Void
jump-
Rays again. That would be bad.
Well, I mean, at that point, I just start playing Protoss and building Void Rays, and then we'll all
There
just
you
build Void Rays, and we'll have a great time because that'll be
Yeah.
fun.
Everybody
Yeah.
plays Protoss in the end, dude.
And they could just remove the maps because, like, at that point, your Void Rays fly and don't care about terrain.
They keep
so-
kicking the can. They keep kicking the can on doing something about that. But the intern does continuously feed the pro community hope that there's a couple of small things that will be patched after whatever tournament is coming up. Before it was winter where they couldn't patch it because of winter. Then they said they couldn't patch it because Katowice. So we'll just have to see how
If
soon
nothing
after
actually
Katowice.
happens.
It just depends because as soon as Katowice happens, they might be like, oh, we need a month or two to look at it, and then say, oh, well, we can't do it until after Valencia. So, and then we can't do it until so maybe I think we'll hit a big gap in
Dude.
terms of big tournaments after probably Montreal. So maybe after Montreal. So maybe like September, October, we'll get a patch.
The fucking intern's a Protoss player. Like, that's the only. It has to be it, right? That's it. He's a 5.2, like a 5.2k Protoss Void Ray All-Inner who occasionally beats a professional Terran. And it's like, this shit's never going away, bitch.
No.
100%!
No, the problem
only,
is
no.
the real problem is that this guy probably is a fan of StarCraft, who knows everybody is gonna shit all over him nonstop, no matter what he does, and he's terrified to make a bad move. Because even when they still had a team, that was the number one reason they told me that they didn't move quickly on some things, because they don't like seeing the entire community just constantly shit on them no matter what they do. So that's the assumption I'm going with. They don't want to screw up, which of course
Yeah.
fear of failure leads them to not acting, which is worse than making a mistake and correcting it. But well, that's just where we are.
So I think
Reminds me of
Frost
a really quick story of David Kim back when that was his job and he was the face of the balance team. And I went to one of the BlizzCons and asked him, just as a kind of Q&A for the weekly All-In, how does it make you feel psychologically to be the butt of people's insults and people are shouting your name whenever they lose and they blame you and stuff like this? Like, does that get to you? And he said, no, I do the same thing with Hearthstone. Completely base. He just knows that that's a thing that people do and he didn't take it personally at all. So big respect for that. But yeah, it does take a lot of courage to deal with the community. Like any patch that you do, someone's going to be mad every time.
Brown Bear?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would echo your comments, Sal, that my main concern would be prioritizing changes to StarCraft in a way that only allowing changes or only allowing things to happen that add value to Microsoft's network. And if there's ever a conflict of interest between what's good for Microsoft and what's good for StarCraft, of it coming down on the side of Microsoft. So things like requiring Game Pass, or using the IP in a way that doesn't necessarily is not necessarily good for StarCraft, but is good for Microsoft. That would be my only concern. From what I've seen from Age of Empires, they just seem to take a hands-off approach and let the studios do their thing. So I guess realistically, my main concern would be them not hiring the right people to work on StarCraft. That's always a concern at these big companies where you can do like internal transfers from role to role without doing like without re-interviewing or anything. Just some random person from Microsoft's like, hey, I'm going to go work on StarCraft. Maybe that could be a bad thing.
Yeah. All right, Cobra, do you have any other questions?
We have 3 more questions.
Nice. All right, so you're gonna take the next one, dude.
Okay, so we got Thomas Clint, I think it would be the name. Not really a question as much as an insanely huge shout out. I sadly had to cancel my subscription due to personal finances. Scandinavian rent is a bitch. I'll be back when I hit better times. I just wanted to say huge thank you to everyone working on the Pylon Show, both on screen and behind. Heart. Thanks, buddy. Sucks that you're on hard times, but you'll be back, I'm sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Thomas. Appreciate it. All right, and Dave Testa. Dave, I love you, man. Do you think the Zealot will turn into a bunch of clippies from Microsoft Office? Sorry, I couldn't keep a straight face. But yeah, do you think the Zealot will turn into the clippies? What do you think?
I don't think so. I don't think it's going to happen, guys. I'm sorry. I know you were all really holding out for that one. I just have this weird feeling that it's not going to work out.
That'd be a
I
good
don't know.
April Fool's Day, though.
That would be good.
That would be good.
What if you could drop clippies with Medivacs into people's bases and it would be like, it looks like your minerals aren't saturated. Let me help you with that. It looks like your Evo chamber isn't upgrading anything. Can I suggest an upgrade?
Some Blyblock.
And it just
Yeah,
backseat
Blyblock.
games you. It doesn't
Yeah.
attack anything.
That'd be good. No damage, just advice. Just tool tips.
I think Fear Dragon actually has most of that coding already done based on the bot he wrote for your
Oh.
chat cell. So
That's true. That's true. They'll probably,
so-
Microsoft's probably going to approach Ravi and be like, dude, we need your bot for this. Here's $1 million.
For context for Pylon Show listeners, okay? If you guys want to know, so like Ravi's like a nice on-screen persona, okay? He makes some jokes, but he's like, he's a great caster, but he's a sick son of a bitch, okay? So, what he's done is he has created a bot, okay, that uses OCR, so text like he reads text from image that reads my supply in the top right corner. And every time I'm supply blocked, he posts in chat telling me I'm supply blocked, okay? And then at the end of every game, all right, he has the bot like tell me how many times I was supply blocked, but he will give $1 incentive in cheers if I can manage to not be supply blocked for the course of the entire game, right? So he like informs me that I've done like a good job. All right, this positive reinforcement shit has gone too far. Okay, it's insane. It's insane. And I know everyone's gonna be like, well, he's giving you like money. Just shut up, streamer. Listen, okay? It's infuriating. All right, he knows it too. He doesn't care about the money. It's all about getting under my skin. All right, it's a PSA. This is the kind of guy you guys are supporting. There you go.
And that's only bot 1 of 6, as far as I know.
He's got a bot lined up. I know this is true. That detects whether or not you're frowning, and he's gonna tell me to cheer up. I know he has it. Like, he's talked about it. He has one that listens to whether or not you swear, and it will tell you to watch your language. Okay? And then he has another one, and if you go like, I'm mad, he'll say, hi mad, like, I'm blah blah blah. Like, he'll have like a dad joke based on like your language as well. He's got like bots for days, okay? It's insane what he'll do to try and troll me.
Yeah, man. You guys got a full arsenal, dude.
speaking of one Ravi,
Yeah, I
Creek,
knew this was coming.
You want to take this one? You want to take this one, Sal?
Hey guys, big fan.
Okay, yeah, let Neuro
In light
read
of the
it. He's got-
Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard, and the potential hope the scene feels for the game changing, do you think these changes could allow Sal to get Grandmaster at some point? Or will the status quo remain? Thanks. Signed, GTX 3090 cooling system.
Like, it's just factually wrong. I made Grandmaster. I've been Grandmaster on an A for ages now, for like 4 months. This is just slander.
4 months is ages.
Sal,
In my life?
I see you. I see you. Your feelings are valid, and you've accomplished a great many things in your career.
Thanks,
and you
Dad.
have a lot of things going on in your life that are more important than a game, no matter how much you love the game. And you should prioritize taking care of yourself, your mental health, your family, and the people you care about above all else. I love you, buddy.
Wholesome memes.
good.
That's because you know I'm tilted right now. Like, even though, like, I'm trying to keep a straight face, like, that shit. No, yeah, okay. Thanks, Ravi.
Can someone Photoshop Sal's picture in the Grandmaster border?
I have my Sal GM emote it's me in a gold border that says fake. It's fake GM.
Yeah, but can
From
you do
when-
the picture
The
that I
couch
used
one?
with the cables? That was a really good picture.
I think we should use the couch one instead.
I just
Oh,
left
no.
that picture on my stream for my AFK screen, and people were like, "Is Sal dead? What is this, a vigil?"
Dude, that was such an excellent picture. It's if you Google it, it's up there. But that was like, that picture comes from when I was redoing like the studio's cable management, and I was literally just sitting in a sea of cables. Like, there must have been like 100 cables kicking around. I was just like lost as to where everything went. Label your cables, okay? Where they belong, to what device. Label the cables. It helps.
I sent it to Cobra. The world needs to know about
I
this.
look like such a
Dude.
disheveled mess, bro.
You look
I've
defeated,
been there
man.
too long. Oh.
Label your cables, people.
Label
So
your
Sal
cables.
isn't sad.
Label your cables.
Yep.
That took
Label
me
your
2
cables.
days. It was so long, and I like worked like all day for 2 days to get everything in the right spots.
When he gets proxy void raid one game, queues into the next game, and then sees the battery outside his base, that's his face.
That is. It's true.
Awesome. Next question, Cobra.
So I'll read the next one. Hyper Turtle asks, are there any plans for the StarCraft show to acquire the StarCraft Observer? Wonder who that is. If we could, what would it mean for the StarCraft TikTok community if this happened? I'll let Niche answer the second part of that, but for the first part, we released a video talking about how we're going to have a couple new regular hosts, but it'll be rotating based on the week. There might be a chance the same host or hosts host a couple times in a row, like, back-to-back weeks, but it'll be more of instead of a single host rotating out. I released a video today, and it has a whole bunch of information on this. You can go check it out. It's also a developing process. So the future is planned, and we have plans for it, but it still can change. We do not plan to acquire Niche full-time to do 100% of the shows. Might he return? Maybe. I'll let you answer the part about TikTok, since that's not really my field. But
So I believe it was a shitposting question as a reference to the other acquisition.
I'm still ping-ponging it to him so that he may answer the shitpost question.
So I can't confirm nor deny that there have been talks about this. Just good things are happening. It's acquisition season. Things are getting
Can we
crazy.
have an
I just
unannounced acquisition?
I just hope you keep putting out those beautiful videos, okay? I hope you keep doing your thing, because nobody else is doing that sort of stuff. And at the very worst, some people that didn't know about StarCraft maybe learned something about it. So I take
That's
that
true,
I
man.
take that dub. I take that dub any day. If new people are
That's a
finding
big
out
dub.
about the game, that's a dub in my eyes.
Thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I put a lot of love into those things, and those TikToks. And yeah, you'd be surprised. There's a lot of people that are just like, "What is this game? Where can I get it? Are people still playing? Yes, go download it. don't play Protoss.
Do you think
so-
Nish could get in trouble with antitrust laws if he has a monopoly on the TikTok videos and the StarCraft subreddit?
that's a good question.
All I'm gonna say is that I refuse to install or use that app, and I watch all of them on the StarCraft Reddit. So please keep posting them there,
Will do.
especially
All right.
especially for the people who don't know how to not engage with content they don't like, because reading their comments is also a highlight of my day.
Hmm.
We gotta let Nate run because he's late for a meeting. So we're gonna let you do your shout outs real quick.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. I did try to like stick through the whole entire thing as much as I could, but I'm just I'm just spamming battle cruisers every day. That's pretty much it. And I'm casting the Splitgate Pro series every weekend through the end of March. So if you guys are interested in that sort of stuff, come check it out. But thanks for having me on. I think we got to have some really good discussions about gaming industry and all that jazz today.
Thanks for joining
Awesome.
us, buddy.
Thanks, Nate.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for joining
Love
us,
you, Nate.
dude.
Take care of yourself, dude.
Thanks. You guys too.
All right, I guess it's Brown Bear next, right? Because we're kind of closing out now. So where can we find you, buddy? What are you up to?
Hey, you can find me on Twitter, I guess, at brownbear_47. I mostly make YouTube videos nowadays, youtube.com/brownbeargaming. I try to do a video every few weeks. It's pretty hit or miss. But yeah, that's where you can find me. I usually focus on things like game design, games criticism. I write a lot about StarCraft and Age of Empires, but I also write about, other strategy games, other like action adventure games, sort of whatever I'm interested in. So yeah, definitely. If that's something that interests you, definitely feel free to check it out.
Awesome, man. Thank you
Sweet,
so
dude.
much. Thank you for being on the show, dude.
Yeah, thank you. I've enjoyed your TikToks as well. I usually don't like the short form videos, but I've enjoyed seeing them on my Instagram feed.
Thank you. I'm trying to convince Sal over here to start making them, but it's not biting,
No.
man.
Hey, we got him to start creating YouTube shorts to entertain the idea. So that's a step in
There
the
you
same
go.
same path. Maybe Reddit will eventually figure out that a YouTube short, an Instagram story, and a TikTok are all really okay. That's another rant. That's
I
another story.
outsourced
Okay.
that
There you go.
to my editor and to the chat. Okay, it's the clips. Like I can't take credit. That's I don't want to sully my hands.
You made the content. You were there.
Relax.
It's true.
My
It's true,
hand.
man. Awesome, Nero. Where can everybody find you?
I stream on Twitch. I make YouTube stuff. I post replay packs, and I'm working on an audiobook of my book, The Path: A Gamer's Guide to Mastery. It is like 2/3 done now. I have like 19-ish chapters of that, which will all be uploaded. So try to get that packaged up pretty soon. It's been a fun project. I ended up cutting my finger with a potato peeler directly
Oh my
where
gosh.
your finger touches the keyboard. So it wasn't a major injury, but it was an injury in the very most annoying spot for gaming. So this last Tuesday, I didn't do a try hard stream. I just read chapters from my audiobook, and I also went through and I kind of roasted my own first person VOD of my StarCraft play from the week before. Just looking for like inefficiencies in your attention of you're looking too long at this, you're focusing too much on that when something else would be a higher priority. But yep, Zerg GM is the main bread and butter. I raid on the weekends in Classic BC, and I have a D&D campaign on Thursdays called Wayfarers. And I hang out with
Nice.
Sal on Thursdays too, a lot of the time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I'll be joining you this Thursday too. Actually. Oh, it's my
Nice.
turn. Okay, sweet.
The
So you
segue
can
was too
find me-
perfect.
Yeah, you could find me at twitch.tv/UpAtreeZelda. Same with YouTube, UpAtreeZelda there as well. I lose to Protoss on ladder, and then I put those videos on YouTube. So, yeah. Oh, and I do co-op companions. So if you have any desire to watch co-op content, me and Harstom yell at each other, and then try to sort stuff out, and then yell at each other again, and then
The banters.
yeah, the banter's the best part, but like co-op companions is one of my favorite things to do. So that's the only real YouTube thing I do, I think, aside from just upload VODs from stream. I enjoy it a lot.
Awesome,
And
man.
StarCraft Obs, where can we find you, buddy?
So you can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on TikTok. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on any social media platform. I'm usually reposting art from the StarCraft community and featuring them. Alongside that, I am posting a bunch of TikToks and just putting a StarCraft spin on it, spreading the word of spreading the word of StarCraft to TikTok, and just trying to get the community built over there. And also, it's a podcast as well. So I also go around the community interviewing everybody and just getting their story as to how they came into StarCraft and how it's changed their lives. And the most recent episode being with Patrice Zelda over here. It was an amazing story. Had a great time. Took a very long time to come out because I had so much material to work with, and the story ended up being beautiful. And, thank you so much, Sal. I really appreciate it, man.
Oh,
You
no
can
problem.
talk a lot.
It was awesome,
Yeah,
dude.
I will listen to it because I can't stand it. But
So we did 2 interviews. So I did one. The first one was
yeah,
4 hours long. That went by quick. And then the second one was about like an
Was
hour
it?
and a half. Yeah, dude.
bro, I never shut the fuck up.
No, because I
Oh.
let you go. I let you go. I need the material to build your story. So it was awesome, dude. It came out great. But yeah.
4 hours.
Yeah, dude. And then I just had trouble with the story. Like I said, I had so much material to work with. But yeah, so StarCraft Observer is also a podcast, and you can follow it there, subscribe, and it's trying to be a monthly show right now. So yeah. Awesome. Cobra, did you have anything?
For our audio listeners, Twitch stream has changed. That's now on twitch.tv/CobraVenom, VE7NOM7. And that's where the live stream will be. But for the podcast and the YouTube content, that'll all stay the same. I don't have anything else. That's about it. Appreciate all of you
About,
for joining us.
The other podcast you run.
Oh, I thought my co-host would have shouted that out when that was his turn.
Well,
Fuck.
I mean, you hadn't shouted
You're
out
double.
anything,
Then you're
like, what the
double
fuck?
dipping. Okay, fine. So Sal and I do a
Yeah.
podcast called Almost Essential Podcast, and we talk about tech stuff and the state of streaming and what we do with like hardware and plugging an XLR microphone into an Ethernet corded box, and fun stuff like that. What cameras you could buy for streaming. How we might troubleshoot Nisha's camera that keeps freaking out a little bit. Is that software? Is it hardware? We go into deep details on stuff like this, and then it's kind of a nice way for 2 random tech people that don't know everything, but we know some stuff, to rant about tech and try to raise the level of every streamer in the community, even Mechanic, by recommending them better hardware. Is that a good sell?
Which I finally won.
Yes.
I won that battle. I fought it hard and long, but Mechanic finally has a microphone that doesn't make people want to string themselves up with the
not
tin can
just
that's attached.
Microphone, but where the microphone is, as we
Oh,
learned with
dude.
apoptosis.
Don't do it. No, this isn't that channel, man. We can't do it to Apop, okay? You can't. You can't do this to him. It's illegal.
Hey, he fixed it and it's greatly improved.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I know.
Because
When you have to
Apoptosis is
ask the
going to host
streamer,
Pylon
where is your
show, so.
microphone?
And the streamer
Yeah.
answers, about 2 feet away, and I just face palm, like,
He knew he knew what was coming.
yeah, because
Yeah,
I was,
You knew.
I had it on my whiteboard to yell about. It said, yell about Apoptosis about his mic before he hosts hosts his
my
version of
God.
Pylon Show, and then I hear
didn't
Sal
wait.
do it for me, and I'm like, okay, that's great, awesome.
That just crosses off the thing on the list.
I took the
Thanks,
eraser,
Sal.
just took it out, and it was done, easy peasy.
Like a life achievement right there.
Yeah.
I listened to him for 3 seconds and I was like, dude, your mouse is louder than you. How is this possible? Where is your mic located? I don't
Next to my mouth.
understand. Yeah, exactly. Oh.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining today's Pylon Show, episode number 150. Hope you guys all enjoyed. Thank you everybody for showing up in Twitch chat. Thank you for everybody out there in the podcast land for listening today. And yeah, thank you for our guest for being on. Thank you, Cobra Venom. Thank you, Sal. I always get confused with Sour Tree, but yeah. Thank you, Sal, for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. It's been a really big honor just to be on the Pylon Show, and thank you everyone for watching.
Thanks for hosting with me, man.
Episode
Thank you.
complete.